If you make note of that, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Public Works Appreciation, May 15th.
The
So it's
15th to the 21st.
So it's the same week.
We had a big luncheon this
Yeah.
afternoon.
That's,
Same week,
Seafood
different
burritos.
group.
Different
you
groups.
have
They're her
Public Works
favorite.
hanging banners for public police.
This is the city council meeting for May 3rd. It is 7:10 p.m. We're going to do a roll call to make sure that we have everyone present to conduct business.
Ecom present?
Hence present.
Hurst present.
Summer Hayes present.
Keelan present.
I don't know.
And we also have Mayor Wilkinson, who is also on Zoom.
Mayor listening in and will contribute. I thank Councilwoman Meekum as our Mayor Pro Tem for handling the meeting tonight. I just think it's better if somebody's doing it there in person, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We will begin with a legislative prayer and thought. I have been assigned to do that tonight. And just wanted to mention that we're coming up on Peace Officers Memorial Day on May 15th. I've thought quite a bit about this over the past few days and thought about the gratitude that I have for the police officers in our city that take such good care of us and keep us safe. Police Chief Child mentioned in his report last week, there was a sergeant, a Utah Highway Patrolman, who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound out by Tooele. He happened to have trained one of our sergeants, Sergeant Boucher, and just reminded me that our officers put themselves in harm's way and on the line every day, and just thought that we could maybe take a minute to think about that and show appreciation to our officers as we approach May 15th. And then I'd also like to acknowledge that it is Public Works Appreciation Week. Those are, it's on May 15th through the 21st. Those are also unsung heroes in our community that, from waking up on January 2nd at 2 or 3 in the morning to fix a water line on Chase Lane, they have our backs every single day. So also want to express our appreciation for all that we have so many city staff that really do keep our city running, and very appreciative of that. With that, I'd like to offer a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity to meet together this evening as a city council and as a community. Please bless us that we will have thy guidance and inspiration, that we will do things that will, and make decisions that will help us to continue to have a beautiful community to live in, that we'll be able to hear the needs of our residents, and that we'll be able to be blessed with inspiration to solve those issues that need to be solved so that we can continue to live in this beautiful community that we have. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We now have an open session. If you would like to make a comment, if you would approach the dais, and then if you'll keep your comments brief, a couple of minutes, we would appreciate that.
State your name.
Oh, state your name. Do they need to state where they're from?
Can.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm up here again. I am Mitzi White. I am from Centerville and a member of the Trails Committee. I'm going to try to make this quick and try not to babble. So I appreciate us having a conversation about the trail access. This is a really good start to things, and we have a good ways to go with this, but this is a good start. And like I mentioned before, I have gathered a lot of information when it comes to, a lot of information. I won't get into the details now, but any questions that anyone ever has when it comes to any legal issues or even when it comes to environmental issues as pertains to our hillsides and pertains to trail access, land acquisition, and so forth, just let me know. So I just wanted to mention there's a Draper, good ways south of us. If you look at an aerial view of our hillsides of the Salt Lake Valley, you can see the houses are just way up to where it's steep. You look at Centerville, you don't see that. It's pretty awesome. If you go further south past Salt Lake City and you keep on going past the Cottonwood Canyons, all of a sudden you see Draper, and you notice that it's very similar to Centerville, and it's pretty interesting. If you just Google Draper and what they decided to do with their hillside, you can find some information on the history of that and how they decided to preserve it. And I can't believe they made it happen. It's amazing. So maybe you guys can look into that, and and I'm sure that they would be glad to talk with you, if you have any questions. The only other thing I wanted to mention is there are opportunities for acquiring land, and maybe we should start to look into that. I know that we were talking about annexing and all the pros and cons with that, but, Draper might give you some information about the pros and cons and things that they went through, the positives, the negatives. For instance, people can donate to the city. They can either donate doing a charitable sales, and that's where you sell for less than the market value. The amount that they did not receive, they can write off on taxes. Or they can do an they can donate the full amount, and then they can write off that on taxes. It's a little more detailed than that, but I have information on it. So just thought I might throw that out there for things to think about.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Council, my name is Mark Earnshaw. I've been a resident of Centerville for the 36 years. Me and my friend wanted to do something to help the people in Ukraine, so I called Mayor Wilkinson. I got to be good friends with the mayor when we were helping the Centerville refugees find new places to go from the trailer park. And I'm happy to report that the 48th family just got into a home, so all 48 families have found a place to live now. But me and my friend decided to do a concert, so we asked the mayor, and he thought it was a great idea. We didn't know everything you had to do a concert. I have a friend that's got a band that's going to come and play for free for us. The Ukrainian Society's on board with us. They're taking all the donations through RQ code. The Utah Choral Council's bringing a choir to sing the Ukrainian national anthem, and we want to do it at this park here. We were keeping it simple. We understood through meeting with the city people that we could only have one food truck, so we couldn't have to have a certain permit. And when we had to have extra toilets, so we got honey buckets coming for free. And we felt like if we kept it down to around 200 to 400 people, that we didn't need to go before the planning commission. That was our understanding through a month and a half ago meeting. But we're finding now that we have to go before the planning commission, and you got to give them a 10-day notice before you go, and our event's on May 14th. I talked to Mayor Wilkinson on the phone tonight, and he says, why is that? He says it only has to be 24 hours to go before the city council. Why is it different? And so that's why I'm here, to ask for leniency on that rule. I understand that there's regulations and things that have to be in place for things like this, but this is a situation that is unusual. There's people dying, they need money, and we're here, Centerville citizens, just two guys with a vision, which is the group's name, Vision, that wants to raise some money to help the people in Ukraine. So I'm here asking for your council, as a city council, what we could do to make this event come off on the 14th, because it's out there. I've got flyers printed up and everything, thinking that we did everything right, and now we're finding out we didn't. And so, a great opportunity for Centerville City to step up and do the right thing. And so I just share that with you, and if you have any thoughts.
Councilmember Hurst, if I could respond. So Corey and I are going to get together tomorrow to discuss alternative options. We definitely have very strict planning commission process. However, there might be an alternative. So we're going to have a brainstorm tomorrow, so you'll be expecting a phone call from us tomorrow afternoon or so, and hopefully we have an alternative.
Yeah, I mean, if we have
To
to
make it
get
happen.
rid, if we have to get rid of the food truck, I mean, we'll do away with the food truck.
Definitely more than that. With a lot of people, it's a whole lot of steps and other agencies are involved. But we'll talk about it tomorrow, and we'll get back to you and try and find an alternative. Appreciate you, you and Jonathan and what you've done for the.
Jonathan just has I mean, I appreciate you doing, he's got just, his family's from Ukraine, and he's got a cousin that wrote him a letter. Can you read that?
Sure. I mean, it's up to Councilor Hurst. I mean, it's part of the public comment.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Council, I just wanted to say that,
Can you give us your first and last name?
sure, it's Jonathan Lysenko,
Lisenko, okay, thank
and I
you.
live here in Centerville, too. My friend Mark and I got together a couple of months ago, and I said, Mark, let's do a yard sale. Let's try to raise some money. And so he said, well, let's do a concert, we can raise more money. And I said, okay, that's fine. So we did a little family yard sale and sent some money over to my cousin who's over in Ukraine. And just this afternoon, she wrote this, so I thought you'd be interested. She said, I want to thank you and all the people who helped. I don't know how to thank you. I owe you so much. I am very grateful to your country for the support of Ukraine. I gave part of the money you sent to a volunteer who helped immigrants from other cities. They've lost their homes. They need help too. In our city at the moment, it is safe, and people from Kharkov, Kherson, and many occupied cities come here for help. We have volunteers in the city who feed people and give them temporary housing, and our family helps too. We bake pies and buns for people, cook hot dinners, and help with things. Your money helps our family survive. Thanks to you, we can pay for utilities, buy food. In my city, there are still clothing stores, grocery stores, and I can buy groceries. Also buy important medicines for the wounded military, and we have saved more than one life. There are many people here who have lost their homes. Some of them have lost loved ones. One man walked for 5 days to save his life. Here you always need help. You always need money. In my city so far, 50,000 people who have come here to save their lives. The war is still going on, and the enemy set a plan to enter my region too. It can happen at any time. They are not in my city, only thanks to our military. I pray that would be the case. I want to thank you again for your help, and may God bless you. And I just think that's pretty cool to, first of all, hear from her right now, and also to know that this is an extraordinary situation, and we really want to do our best to reach out and help them. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to working together. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lisenko. Anyone else?
Al Phelps, Centerville resident. Thanks for talking about trails and discussing, I guess, what stands in the way of development as well as what we can do to help with access. I would like to, I heard mention of possible funding to acquire land as something we are maybe thinking about or maybe can look at. And I would just love to be a voice that says, yes, please, let's figure this out. Because 2/3 of that hillside has private land above Firebreak Road before you hit Forest Service land. 2/3 of Centerville hillside, approximately. And while there's not official trails on that 2/3 of Forest Service land, there's a lot of unofficial ones that people go on. There's a lot of hunters that use them. A lot of general hikers like myself or runners like those behind me that like to bushwhack. And it would be a shame to lose that access, and the best way I see of keeping access is to own land. I'm not a rich man, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd have one staircase going up and another one going down. But I do think the city could potentially do more to help those get access, maintain access, and look to the group, the user group that is here and upcoming, which really is an outdoor user group, both hunters, hikers, bikers, ATVers, runners. There's a whole gamut of people, paragliders, I think that's the right word, that use that land and often, and that use the public land that can become inaccessible. So, separate topic. I've heard the cemetery land is not available. Like the city had an idea for donation of cemetery land and something was wrong with it. Did I hear that right? No? Okay, cool. Rumors abound, so. I did have a question. Yeah. I'm glad I got a bunch of blank stares. I did have a question. Has anyone approached the landowner that has a house on the hill with water and power about potentially buying that as a city cemetery site? I can think of no more beautiful place than up on that hillside to have a cemetery with walking paths for remembering your loved ones, and there's already infrastructure, and it's within city limits. So I don't know who or what or how would go about that, but it'd be an amazing place for a cemetery. And I'm not big on those things, but I see they're important to society, and that would be really cool. So that's it.
Thank you, Al.
Nathan Woodbury from Centerville. It's more a question. I have wanted to talk on one of the agenda items. It's a little bit further into the meeting. Do I address that now, or is it time given at that point?
Which item is it?
It's the water
Efficiency.
efficiency amendment.
If it's the water efficiency, it's a public hearing, so you'll have an opportunity then, or
Yes.
just to make sure it's not the prohibiting use of culinary for irrigation, it's not that one, right?
one.
So there'll be an opportunity
Okay,
during
I'll
that
talk at
public
that
hearing.
point.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject there.
That's okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you for an opportunity to speak. My name is Dave McFall. I'm a Centerville resident. My wife Wanda and I have lived in our home on Barnard Street for 37 years. Probably most days, besides bad weather days or being out of town, we've been up on the hillside walking our dogs. We've walked and hiked with our kids and now our grandkids. And we have a very strong emotional attachment to our hillside, and we love our hillside. And I think it is one of the greatest assets that Centerville has, that we have the open space and the trail access that we have up there. Many times I've run across people up on the hillside who are not from Centerville. They're from Farmington, Bountiful, even other locations that come to Centerville because of the access that we have available for the hillside and for their enjoyment of getting up on the mountainside. So, to us, it's a very important issue. I really appreciate Mitzi White and Bob Gray and Al for all that they're doing to inform us and to help us to work through some of these issues as we look forward to trying to decide what we're doing with our hillside. Once we develop up there, whatever space will be developed and whatever will happen will be that way forever. And so what we have up there now is so valuable, and we need to consider that value and realize that many, many, many Centerville residents access and use our hillside regularly. So I appreciate an opportunity to share that comment with you. A couple other real quick things. In speaking, the other day, so 2 days ago, I was up on the hillside on the Fire Break Road with my dog, ran across a Weber Conservancy gentleman who, his name is Zeke, who is involved with enforcement. And I guess Mitzi had contacted the county and mentioned about the development that's going on with the orchard there off of the Fire Break Road. They were not aware of it. And his question to me when he was asking me where this was located, He said that he was looking to see if there was any heavy equipment on it, and in fact, there are two backhoes, large backhoes on that property right now. And his concern, as he was sharing, was about the easements that might be violated, but also the fact that water line up there, 48-inch, I believe he said, water line, huge, and would create a disaster if it was ever broken. His concerns that people could be up there without county or city knowledge and digging around up there on what he thinks is his property. So we're concerned about that. He was concerned about that. And so I just wanted to share that with you as it was brought up previously in the meeting that Weber has interest in that area up there. And I want to mention two more quick things. Number one is Mitzi, in addressing the council, the last council meeting, mentioned about how she observed once, and I'm sure she has seen this many times, a four-wheeler, an ATV going up the hillside off trail and off the fire break road. And it's something that I've seen many times, and it irritates me, and it just discourages me, because when that happens, when they are off trail, they are damaging our hillside. And we have such fragile soils up there that when an ATV or a motorcycle goes off trail just once, it leaves a track that will not grow back normally, and will oftentimes take years to get any vegetation to grow in it, but when it does, the vegetation will not be the same. And so, as she's mentioned, where you can see it on Google, we can see it even from Legacy Highway. Sometimes I can see some of the tracks and cuts that have been made on the hillside from unauthorized use. And it's interesting that I have stopped a couple of folks that have been up there off the fire break road and asked them and commented about not being up there, and they have said to me just about universally, oh, we didn't know that we can't be here. And I think the problem there is because we don't have enough or adequate signage along the fire break road designating where people can go and where they can't. And so I would like the council to consider opportunities for us to have better signage so that people can have better understandings of where they can and cannot go up there. And the very last thing about development is that I live on Barnard. And if there is development that starts taking place up on the hillside there between Parish Lane and Barnard Creek, Barnard Street is going to be one of the main accesses up there. We already have a street that is not in great condition. In the last 5 years, we've had several water line breaks. We have had damage on the road regularly where it's sunk or where it's just damaged and needs to be repaired. It's happening regularly. If we get heavy equipment going up and down that street, which we undoubtedly will with development, it's going to further damage the street and make it really a very bad situation for our residents that live up in that area. It's a main access for the hillside going up Barnard. So I just want to mention that as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
We do have somebody on Zoom.
Okay.
Betty,
Perfect.
if you'd like to unmute.
Betty may be
Go ahead
later,
and speak.
but I think Betty might be for,
She's here for open session.
oh, open
Open session?
Okay.
Okay. Betty, would you like to comment during the open session?
Jennifer, do you have to unmute?
No. Good evening. No, I'm here to speak to Juneteenth.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Is that, do they need to respond to now?
It depends
Because
on how
it's
you
not
want
a
to handle
public
it.
hearing.
Public hearing.
Councilmember Hurst, I mean, if you want to ask for comment during that time.
Okay.
Councilmember Summerhays, if you want to introduce, and then Councilmember Hurst can have her discretion on how she wants to proceed.
I had reached out to, because Juneteenth was going to be on our agenda, I had reached out to the state representative, Sandra Hollins, who was the sponsor of the Juneteenth House bill that was passed nearly unanimously through the State House, just to provide some insights or some context or information that might be helpful for us as a council. So I guess it's not a public hearing, but I think it'd be great to hear from one of those individuals?
That's fine. I would suggest maybe we wait until we're discussing.
It's your call.
We may not be there for a couple hours, though.
Yeah, so
Oh.
out of respect for her time.
Yes, let's let you go ahead now. I'm sure we can remember what you have later on.
So, good evening, everyone. Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Betty Sawyer. I am the director of Project Success Coalition, a local nonprofit in Ogden that serves throughout the state with education, health, cultural arts, and advocacy. I've had the pleasure of leading the Juneteenth movement in Utah for the past 33 years and worked with Representative Sandra Hollins in 2016 to get a day of observance passed, and that did pass the legislature, and Governor Herbert signed that into law, and then reached back out again as we were working ongoing to make Juneteenth a state holiday as well as a federal holiday to sponsor a bill again this year. I also serve on the national board of the Juneteenth Observance Foundation, who has led the movement to have Juneteenth recognized throughout the country. I had an opportunity to listen to the minutes from the last meeting and appreciate the background that was shared about the history, the significance of Juneteenth to our country as well as to Utah. In our state, Juneteenth has been celebrated since the late 1800s. We've been doing some research and found that they had parades on State Street with the Juneteenth Queen and all kinds of festivities. The work that I've done for the past 33 years has included having celebrations in Weber County, in Davis County, in Salt Lake City and County, and we have since reached out and have formal partnerships with South Salt Lake, with Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City. We've had events in West Valley. We partner with our higher education institutions to do Juneteenth as well. Utah State, Weber at both their Ogden and Davis campus participate in Juneteenth, as well as the University of Utah. Utah Valley will be doing a celebration this year, and Westminster College as well. So Juneteenth is growing across the state. And I would just like to encourage you to look at this opportunity as one to embrace those freedoms that we've all committed to over 150 years ago. And I know even with the state legislature during our discussions, they wanted to have the holiday on the Monday so that it would be a consistent time each year. And so that's what they've done. So along with commemorating Juneteenth, traditionally Father's Day weekend, we will also be doing a commemorative event on the holiday itself. And I will make sure that you all have that schedule so that you, your family, your friends can join us as we commemorate this important time in our history. Juneteenth itself ties in with a resolution that the Utah Systems of Higher Ed submitted last year unanimously by their board of the importance of this part of our history in promoting freedoms and unity among all of us. Governor Cox likewise released a compact on racial and ethnic healing. And so this ties in with the work that we're doing across the state to recognize our history, but more so to promote our path through a better and brighter future for all people. So I'm here. I'll hang on as long as I can to answer questions later, but this is about freedom and justice. It's about unity, and I want us to look to embrace that. Ogden City has already declared it to be a holiday and will be joining other cities in recognizing that. Like I said, Salt Lake City has also done so. Salt Lake County has also done so, as well as South Salt Lake City. And I will continue to do research to find out what other cities have already made this decision to support and be consistent with not only the federal holiday, but the state holiday. And I think that's an important point to make as well, is that if we're not going to be consistent, we have to have some strong rationale and justification from deterring from our record and things that we've done in the past when it's come to federal and state holidays. So again, I'm honored to be with you tonight, and I look forward to working with you to find ways to celebrate Juneteenth in Centerville. We have 4 flag raisings that are taking place as a part of our Juneteenth celebration in our different cities and counties. And again, look forward to the opportunity to work with you to do what we can to help our community embrace freedom and justice for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sawyer. Okay. That appears to be, I think we're good with comments for the open session.
You can ask them.
That's good. Is there anyone else? Okay,
I'm good.
we will
Yeah, I
close.
guess I did have one thing for that.
Okay.
What happened to our police officer recognition plaques?
As far as the
We missed it this
presentation,
year? No, the signage that we have that we paid for, that we did through the foundation, that's been up around the city for the last several years, or it just hasn't happened yet?
it hasn't happened yet.
Is it going up this week then?
Mike, the police appreciation banners?
It was Bruce, not Mike, I think.
Right, but Mark and his crew are the ones who install. This is kind of outside, maybe more of I think we can have the conversation right now. We'll be okay.
This is on the police banners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll schedule to put them up, I guess.
Okay,
Is
great.
that what the question was?
That was the
Yes.
question. I thought they would have already been up.
No, not yet.
No,
Alan?
Okay, I apologize then.
no, that's okay.
Alan, do you have a week for me? Public Works Appreciation Week is May 15th to the 21st. I don't know what Police Week is, unless it's the same week. Is this citizen Bill Ince asking the question during open session?
That's right.
Okay.
If it's, I'm great, that's fine.
Well, we're waiting to find out.
We'll report back.
Sounds good. Okay,
Yeah, I like that. There's no reason why you can't
Hear from
give
I
public
like
comment
it
as
as well.
a citizen ints. I like that.
Thank you.
thank you, Bill. We'll move on to the business items of the evening. We have scheduled a public hearing for the fiscal 2023 tentative budget. Nate, would you like to come and present?
You plug in the thing,
Or what?
the plug-in, the USB thing.
Thank you.
Give me 1 second to try to connect here. It's not finding it.
Is it, I plugged it in this USB, should I move it over?
Oh, there it is.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, he says it's working.
I got it.
Oh, here we go.
All right, well, while that's loading, good evening. Tonight is the presentation of the tentative budget, just to review our timeline, where we're at in our budget process. Back in January, we sent out budget requests to all of our department heads, which they filled out and turned back into the finance department. In about the middle of February, myself and Brant met with each department and reviewed their requests. I know I've said this before, but we have a great staff that was very great to work with.
they exceeded my expectations. Then back towards the end of March, beginning of April, us department heads met with council at the budget retreat and kind of went line by line and reviewed our requests. And now here we are, beginning of May, for the presentation of the tentative budget. And this is a public hearing, but this really kicks off the budget season to the public. Gives them a chance to comment over the next month, and then in June we'll hold the hearing for the final budget. So that's just kind of to give everyone an idea of where we're at. This budget has been challenging, to say the least. We're in an interesting time economically with coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're experiencing inflation that a lot of us have never seen before. And so it's made things challenging. But we've had a great staff that we believe have put together a very reasonable budget. Before we jump into the fine details, I just wanted to go over a few of the major structural changes that we've had to this budget compared to years past. You'll note that the attorney services page, which is on page 13, we've moved those line items. The attorney services line is moved to the attorney department, and the prosecuting services and the public defender have moved to the court. And we did that because we felt like it was a better representation of the actual costs for each of those departments. You'll notice that the DARE officer's salary has been moved to the police department, where the rest of the police officers get paid. And then this isn't new to this budget, but we have expenditures tied to it now. But we have our capital projects fund, which is Fund 47. Back at the end of fiscal year 21, we transferred 1.7 million over to that fund. Previously, all of our capital purchases were made out of the general fund, but starting this year, all of our capital purchases or purchases over $5,000 will now be recorded in our capital projects fund. So you'll see that change. In this budget, we really address personnel. Personnel is a high priority in this budget. Middle of last year, we addressed the police department. We did some adjustments, and they received about a 20 to 25% increase in their pay. This year, we're requesting a few items related to personnel. Our cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, we based it on the CPI West region from December 2020 to December 21. We're requesting 7.1% COLA, all employees, with the exception of Public Works, who would receive a 13.1% COLA, department heads, who would receive a 3.1%, and then police would not receive one this year because they got their mid-year adjustment last year. We're also requesting that employees receive a 2% merit that would be allocated by each of their respective department heads. And then additionally, the crossing guards, we'd like to raise their starting wage to $12 an hour. Additionally, in personnel, we have requests for 2 position reclassifications. The first is we'd like to reclassify the GIS specialist to the GIS administrator. And then the recreation/events coordinator, we'd like to reclassify as the community services manager. And each of those would come with pay adjustments to their new pay scale. And then additionally, we had a request from our budget retreat to adjust all of the salaries, all the salary ranges to the 60th percentile in our compensation study. While we haven't completed that, we have allocated $100,000 for that. Right now, that's sitting in our personnel contingency account. So you'll see that there. We will work over this next month to get that completed. And then just real quick, a couple other noticeable changes that you'll see across all the funds. Our interest revenue has decreased due to lower interest rates than in past years. However, since we've done the budget retreat, I've seen interest rates rise a little bit, so I have increased those revenue lines slightly. You'll also see that our liability and property insurance has increased about 6%, and our engineering rates have gone up by 1.5%. All right, so we'll dig into the, pull course, my PDF doesn't want to work. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Oh. Work with me here. All right, here we go. All right, so on page 2, you can see a summary of our entire budget here.
Look like your screen is sharing.
Of course not.
You have this extended screen, I think. You need to move it over.
Oh, I love this. Do you remember how to do that?
I know you're working on those one weird PC computers.
Jennifer, I might have you open it. Might be quicker. Oh, just kidding.
Get a Mac, I can help you.
There we go. All right. My apologies. All right, you can see here, our general fund comprises about half of our total city budget. All right, so moving on to the general fund, we do have presented a balanced budget. You can see on the next page, this gives a breakdown of our expenditures. You can see that between our police and fire, our public safety, that accounts for a little bit over 40% of our total general fund balance. And note that this does include the transfers. The transfers that you see here are the transfers to the Transportation Fund, the Recreation Fund, and our Capital Projects Fund. And each of those details can be found on page 47. All right, I don't want to go over each department within the general fund, but I did want to note a couple of changes that have happened since our budget retreat. The first is that we've increased our payment for Cassell. I will go to that. We've been approached by Cassell, and they have a new system that I think would be very beneficial to our city. Right now, we're on a desktop version, and we house the server in-house. With this Cassell, what do they call it?
Cloud.
Yeah.
Taking Cassell to cloud instead of.
They made it a cloud, so they host the server, they handle all the server maintenance, all the backup. It really. Say that again?
The risk of if there's any incidents, cyber terrorist type thing. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, all the risk is on them, all the maintenance is on them, and then it makes it a cloud base so that if we have anybody working outside the office, we can access Cassell easily. So that does come with an increased cost of about $10,000 a year, and that is split between the general fund and our enterprise funds. So the impact to the general fund would be about $4,000. And
So Nate, can I weigh in on that really quick?
please do.
Yeah, I'm in support of this because we got to remember that when we're moving over to the cloud, you're changing a CapEx for an OpEx, and the benefits that we get on the OpEx side, the reduced risk, the patching, the maintenance, all of that, and the access and the continued access to their most current product is well worth the investment.
See, I'm going to meet with them and get a full demo this week, but I would look for that to be on a council agenda shortly, so we can get all the details about it. But I do think that would be a big benefit to the city. Another change that's occurred since our budget retreat is the police record software, FatPot. That's the one that's going away, but in the meantime, they've increased our costs $985. So we've added that that addition into this budget. All right.
Nate, will you touch on banking fees?
Oh, yes. The banking fees was another thing that council and mayor requested. Luann and I met with Wells Fargo last week. They were extremely helpful, and I think it was a very productive meeting. Going into that meeting, we went through all of our bank fees and highlighted everything we had questions about. Unbeknownst to us, they did the same thing, and so when we got into that meeting, they kind of took over and said, hey, these are all the fees that we don't think are necessary. So we were able to find out that we were getting charged for getting a paper statement or getting fraud alerts. And so they were able to both give us suggestions of things that we could cut out. So we've eliminated paper statements. We've eliminated the CD that they send us, that none of us have a CD reader on our computer anyway. And so we were able to reduce our fees drastically. They also came to us with suggestions that, we pay for a fraud alert service. So anytime someone tries to take money out of our account, we get an email that we have to go in and verify that, yes, it's okay to pay, or no, we don't recognize this. We were getting charged, I think, $14 every time that happened. So on a payroll week when we have, we're paying taxes and a couple different insurance companies, retirement system, we were getting charged for each of those. And Wells Fargo was able to recognize that, and they showed us how we can set up our system different so that we don't get charged that fee for recurring vendors like our insurance and retirement systems. And they also cut down our fee from $14 down to $1. So we found out in March alone we got charged $400 for this fraud alert. They were able to adjust our fee down. So they adjusted it down to $1 and then retroed that back to January. So just with that change alone, that saved us close to $1,000 because of how helpful they were. So long story short, it was a very productive meeting. We were able to find things on their end, fees that they eliminated on their end, and then they gave us suggestions of how to save costs on our end without losing any capabilities. So I believe we should see bank fees go down drastically.
Is this line 320 banking services?
Yes.
So are you adjusting that?
I have not adjusted it yet. I'm kind of waiting another month to see what our bank fees do.
Fair enough.
I know as we increase because the other part of this account is our credit card fees. So as we increase serviceability by letting customers pay online, we will see a little bit of increase there. I'm waiting another month to see what our bank fees from just our checking account do.
Okay.
But I will look at possibly adjusting that if we need to.
Nate?
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
No, thank you for the
Appreciate it.
And Luann did a great job setting that up for us. All right. Let's jump on to the wrap. It's found on page 50. All right, so wrap tax. Oh, I failed to talk about our revenues in the general fund. Sorry. Let me go back. It's a little part of our budget here. So revenues. Our large portion of our general fund revenues come from taxes. In this budget, we have proposed a 35% property tax increase. And that would provide us with $588,000 additional dollars of revenue. Sales tax is our largest revenue source in the general fund. We have set that at 5% above the originally budgeted amount from fiscal year 22. So we've increased that 5%. over the final budget of last year.
So just to clarify, we've amended our budget on sales tax, so it's definitely higher than what we budgeted for back in June. We're not basing 5% above what we've collected to this point. We're just still being conservative and saying 5% of what was last year, what we originally budgeted for, not the amended amount of sales tax collection.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're doing
Yes.
5% of
What
the
is the
original number.
delta
not-
between what was last year and what it is now, do you know?
Yeah, we've done very, that's that 5%, so you can see.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at the budget, the 12-month estimate, at 5.3 million, that's what we estimate collecting in this current fiscal year. However, we're still below that at 5.2 because we're basing it on 5% of last year's approved final budget, not the amended budget of what we've collected, because this year we've done very well in sales tax. So,
Thank you for that clarification, that's helpful.
And sales tax is tricky in this inflationary time. We've had a number of trainings and economists' thoughts, and they think a lot of this is related to inflation. A lot of the increase in revenue that we're seeing is inflationary, although there is some new spending. So trying to predict what that's going to do in the future, we want to try to get it right, but also be a little optimistic at the same, or cautious at the same time. All right, and then the other taxes there, just your franchise taxes. We did lower the telecom and cable franchise tax. That's because people are cutting their landlines and they're cutting the cord on their TV cable. All right, now we can jump back to wrap tax on page 50. Again, this is a sales tax related revenue source. So we increased this the same 5% over the budget of last year. And we have left the same expenditures split, the breakout. So 85% will go to our parks, 5% to the Whitaker home, 5% to the theater, and then 5% is to be determined. All right, moving on to our Parks Fund, which is on page 56. So the biggest source of revenue here is, again, our wrap tax as well as our impact fees. And then our biggest expenses are to pay for past park projects. So you'll see the lease payment for the rec district. That's to pay for the community park expansion. And then the Island View Park is to pay our real property lease with Zions Bank, with a little bit left over for future projects that we might identify. All right. Going on to our capital projects fund, this is the new fund that I talked about a little bit earlier. You will notice that we have a transfer from the general fund of $437,000, and then we are also using fund balance out of this fund. So the fund balance currently sits at about 1.7 million, and we'll be using about 337 of this. And then there's a list of items that we've gone over in the retreat. Nothing has really changed since that retreat, so I won't go into those details. Our transportation fund, which is found on page 59. Again, the majority of revenue for this fund comes from the transportation sales tax and the Class C roads that the state distributes. We also have a transfer from the general fund that is that 415,000. In this fund, we have dedicated about 1.4 million for road projects and another $100,000 for sidewalks. You can see there at the bottom. All right, our Utopia Fund. The good news here is our rebate that we received from Utopia. We just got notice that it's increased. So you'll see that difference, that it increased about $2,500, which lowers our a payment that the portion that the city funds. So that's good news. Going on to our water fund on page 62. Included in this budget is the proposed water rate increase of 35%. We've talked about this numerous times in other meetings, but just to recap, we've had a new master plan for our water, and in order to keep up with that and all the capital projects, we need an increase. And so right now with this increase, if we go to the bottom here, it would give us about 1.5 million for capital equipment and projects, which is where we need to be to keep up with our water master plan. And it also gives us about an additional 150,000, which is line above that last line on that top page, for maintenance repairs, so that we can hopefully avoid another Chase Lane catastrophe. All right, and then moving on to our sanitation fund. Again, this is a fund that we essentially try to break even. The cost of the containers has increased, as you can see, is on the bottom line there. So this does require, to balance the budget, a use of fund balance. I was able to check. We do have a fund balance right now of about $97,000. The other thing that's interesting to know is the last few years we've used fund balance to balance our budget, but we haven't actually, I guess in 2021 we used 9,000, but this year I don't think we'll use any fund balance, and most years we don't. So I'm still going to do an analysis on this fund, but I don't expect the actuals to use that entire amount that we have listed in the fund balance. Okay, and then our drainage is our last fund. New to this budget, we've added the video inspection fee. We were still charging those fees previously, but they were getting tied up with impact fees. So we've just split out that line to better account for it. In this fund, we have a few major projects, the biggest of which is the pipeline project. It's going to cost about $500,000. Now with this project, we're using a sole source contractor who's coming from out of state. So the travel costs associated with that are very high. So we'd like to knock this project out all at once to avoid those costly relocation fees that come with it. We have saved up for it, so we will have to use fund balance to complete this, that you'll see on the top there. But we have about 1.1 million in cash right now, just for this type of project, so we should be good there. So that is all of the tentative budget. I know the RDA budget we'd already discussed in our RDA meeting. The question was raised there about our fund balance. So I was able to look at the end of last year. We did have $304,000 in unrestricted fund balance, but we also had $529 of restricted fund balance, and we can use restricted fund balance on these projects that we had tied. So you weren't incorrect, but there was an additional restricted fund balance for improvements in our RDA areas that we can use. So anyway, I just want to take an opportunity to mention that. So anyway, that's all I had prepared. Again, this is a public hearing, so the public has time to comment now. We do have this budget available both on our website and here at the city office if any citizens would like to come review it. And yeah, are there any questions that I can answer?
If someone asks for a copy, will you give it to them?
Yeah, definitely. And again, it can be found on the website, but if they want one printed out to take home, just let me know and we can get it printed.
Can you, I'm sure we've discussed this in one of our work group sessions, but I don't remember now. Fund 47, we funded it with 1.7 million. Where did that come from, and what is the city's plan to keep that funded? Are we moving that from the general fund? Can you just explain a little how that, I'm sorry, I'm sure everyone knows this but me.
No, so at the end of last fiscal year.
I was whispering with Brent earlier, so.
At the end of last fiscal year, we did a budget amendment, and so we wanted to keep 20% of our fund balance in the general fund. So we requested that we move anything excess of 20% into our capital projects fund. And again, until we tie up our numbers at the end of the year, we didn't know exactly what that would be. Once we got our numbers finalized, we were able to make that transfer, and that came in at the 1.7 million. So my proposal to keep it funded, well, right now you can see we do have a planned transfer of $437,000. To keep it funded, I would suggest that we set, again, whether it's 20% or 25% of fund balance in the general fund, my suggestion would be to keep it in that 20 to 25% range, and then transfer anything excess
To
into our
Fund
capital
47.
project. Right.
Okay,
So
okay.
in other words, though the budget that's been presented as the tentative budget is a balanced budget, it is balanced because we transfer $437,000 into the revenues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's how we balance
And
this fund.
is that real money that will be transferred at the end of this fiscal year?
So this is money that will be transferred next year.
At the end of fiscal year 2023?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So whatever is not spent, right?
Yes.
So if there are savings in other areas, which of course our department heads are great about doing, let's say we do a great job and we don't spend 5% of this $11 million budget. You know, that's $550,000 not being spent, plus or minus, quick dirty math, sorry.
Okay.
Then we're not transferring anything over. But if we spend the savings, we spend everything except for maybe 200,000, then we're only transferring 200,000 to balance budget, which,
Okay.
you see what I'm saying? So
Yes, yeah.
it's there as a just in case, but we're doing our best to keep our costs low throughout the year, but we have to use it to balance this budget. But again, it's not a great practice to use fund balance to balance the budget.
To me, that doesn't mean it's a balanced budget.
In this case, for
It
430,
kind of means that to me too. That's why I'm trying to understand it.
it's a balanced budget. Again, there are items that you will always have let me give an example. So let's say we have a 0-0 balanced budget, but council says, I want pickleball courts, and I want to use Fund 47 to do that, and you transfer $600,000 to pay for those pickleball courts. That's the intent of that fund. The intent of that fund is for those out of the ordinary one-time expenses of those type of projects. That's really
It's
the
a
intent.
savings account to help you balance your budget.
Right, to avoid accruing any debt, and doing your best to, you know, pay as we go. That's what that fund is for. So the argument to be made that we're using these funds for these one-time expenses in Fund 47, these capital improvement projects. However, the concern would be this might be a year-over-year $800,000 what we need in that budget in capital improvement to continue just to operate. So that's the concern. But this is, again, one of those weird times where we don't know what the budget's going to do. We don't know if we're going to have a recession. We don't know if inflation is going to continue to increase, and we still continue to see record-breaking sales tax numbers. I should say record-breaking, but healthy sales tax numbers. We just don't know.
Sure.
So this might be one of those where we might come to you mid-year and say, okay, we have a better idea what's going on this year. We need to make some serious changes. So as department heads, they do a pretty good job by not saying, you've passed the budget, now let me go spend $5 million in the first quarter. That's a cash flow problem at that point. But we'll be conservative in how we spend our funds to anticipate what that change might be 6 months in. Is that fair to say, Nate?
Yeah, no, I think you know that using fund balance out of this fund isn't necessarily a bad thing because it is one-time purchases. However, the concern is that if you have to keep, the recurring use of fund balance isn't sustainable.
So like a backhoe isn't an every year expense. It's a backhoe we're getting this year, but Mike won't see another one for 30 years, right? So that's $150,000.
Taking care of that,
But there are
Mike.
those type of items that you're not gonna see year over year, but that $150,000, is that taking away from maybe a police department getting another vehicle or public works getting another vehicle? So we still might need that 150. Again, this is something new. We're trying to get a historical amount of understanding what really Fund 47 paid for in the past, capital improvement, because we really like to see historically, because it's our first year trying it, but we still working on that data, anyway.
Okay, thank you. The sanitation fund, you're using some fund balance for that as well. I'm assuming not this year, but at some point, we're gonna have to raise sanitation rates? Is that on the forward-moving plan?
Has to happen, whether it's
Okay.
this year or next year.
Okay.
I think next year will be the latest, because we're using more than half of the fund balance this year.
Okay,
It depends, maybe we don't need as many containers, and there might be some savings of $20,000, but we're 54,000 is our fund balance we're using.
Now, when we do order containers, when someone requests a new container, they do have to pay that container advance lease fee, which covers the cost of their container.
right.
The unfortunate thing is we have to order it in advance, and so eventually we'll recognize.
You'll catch up
Yeah,
to some of that.
right, but it's gonna take time. So, you know, as we're low on containers right now, I just had a conversation with Mark about it today. They're 8 weeks out on ordering it, so,
Okay,
yeah, anyway, so we have to pay that big upfront cost. Eventually, we'll recoup some of that cost, but it's hard to tell how long that takes.
How much does a container cost?
The
I don't need an exact.
The black container is in the $70 range, $72, $77. I don't know what the green or the blue cost us.
So if somebody has one and it breaks, do they have to pay for it? Do we have to pay for it? Who pays for that?
We do.
I believe we do.
We pay for that replacement, but if they want a second can, they pay for the second can.
Right, but if they have, the lid comes off or whatever, we give them a new can and without charge.
We would hope that people aren't focused on having very nice garbage cans, so we wouldn't be replacing them often, but I say that because I know someone who cares about the look of their garbage can.
So I think my
They-
lid somehow broke. I think they repaired it. Somebody came and.
There can be repair.
Did somebody repair it
Mike's
possibly?
coming up.
Oh, they do repair.
So there are
it, yeah.
things we can do, and we do our best. I mean, if it definitely is not functional, it needs to be replaced. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'll try to repair them the best they can. If not, they get a new one. But if somebody loses one in the wind, then they get one that is cleaned up and sent back out. Does that make sense?
Well, the other thing is that they do just plain wear out because you're scuffing the plastic around on the ground and a fair amount of weight in them. And I've had to have a couple replaced because the bottom starts flapping out of it.
And the guys have requirements. They'll look at them. They've set up a standard, so it's a standard issue. If we go see a problem, if it's fixable, it's fixable. If it's, got a crack in it where it can't, but it's a standardized, we don't cater to anybody. It's basically, this is what it is, that you get a new one, or you get this one fixed, or you can live with what's there, so.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, this has been scheduled for a public hearing. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second?
Okay, public hearing is open.
All in favor, say aye.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Aye.
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 Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Is there anyone online? Okay. We'll give it just a minute and make sure.
While we're waiting for that,
Sure.
the suggestion had been made, because I made it, that we might think about doing a meeting as opposed to just the public hearing, and usually the public hearing is extended to when it's approved, but a meeting to go through it. Have we made any arrangements or moved towards doing that?
To go to extending the public hearing?
No, towards doing a public meeting about the increase.
Oh,
We went to great lengths when we did it
Yeah.
4 years ago.
so we're talking about your property tax increase. Yes, Nate, I don't know if you had an answer for that.
Yeah, you want me to do that now?
Yeah. Well, let's wait till the public hearing, and then after public hearing, staff will come up.
Do we have anyone online? It does just not appear anyone's coming forward. So can we have a motion to close the public
Motion to
hearing?
close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, so we have, not gone into detail about I call it an open house for the property tax increase, the truth in taxation. Just to give you a timeline, this is kind of one of those timelines that is kind of hard for us. So the county doesn't have to give us our updated property tax number. So remember, property tax, we receive the same amount of revenue year after year, with the exception of new growth. So if we've had new growth, that's when we'll see a dollar increase without going through truth in taxation. So we don't get that number until June 8th is when it's due from the county. And I know they're short-staffed, so it'll probably be pushing that June 8th date, which is hard because the proposed final hearing on the final budget is June 7th. So table it 2 weeks till the next meeting to be able to get that property tax number solidified. So,
But you're saying final hearing, Nate, I thought the final hearing and final budget are not synonymous terms?
so the hearing on the public hearing to adopt the final budget would be June 7th, unless we go to truth and taxation. Then that gets pushed out to after we hold the truth and taxation hearing.
Because
in August.
the original schedule you gave us was June 7th was the public hearing on the tentative budget, and tonight is the presentation of the tentative budget. So the
Probably
public
better.
hearing is the 7th. I'm just reading from our last ones. And then on June 21st, we were going to set the date for the truth and taxation hearing, if that's what we were going to choose to do.
So we
And
adopt,
the adoption of the final budget at that.
so we'll adopt an operating budget until we have the truth and taxation meeting.
Correct, but June 7th is not a final.
So that'll be so what we do, so
least
we
that's
have
the way
our
I'm reading
tentative
it.
budget right now, the
Correct me if
public
I'm
hearing.
wrong.
So we have it open for the next 30-plus days, so until we get to the first meeting in June, which is then, and this is the opportunity for the public to share their comments or input regarding this particular budget. So we'll have another public hearing, the first meeting in June, which traditionally we've delayed that meeting till the second meeting of June for adoption to adopt that budget. Now that budget is going to be the operating budget that we operate off of, assuming with the 35% property tax increase and all that. Truth and taxation meeting comes in August, which is where you'll adopt the final budget with the 35% property tax increase or whatever that decision is to adjust it from there. So we have a number of public hearings still to have public input regarding this property tax increase. Now, to Councilmember Inster's your point, one of the thoughts I had was just actually having a work session, the first meeting in June, instead of having a work session, actually have that be an open house, so it's on our regularly scheduled meeting. And we just have that be that opportunity where residents can come in and share their thoughts. That way we're not waiting till the last minute, and so you're not have a lot of residents showing up on the August meeting, Truth and Taxation, saying, wait, I've never heard of this. We'll have that as the opportunity. Nate, I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, that's what we had talked about. It's just hard to.
And
because we
Bryce
don't
will
have-
market it and get it out there. We want to hear people and what their thoughts are.
Right.
So they'll have public hearings in addition to an open house, so it's a little less formal, and you can have that back and forth with residents.
Okay.
Yeah, the responses at the public hearing are lackluster.
Structured, formal.
Yeah.
You want to have that.
As opposed to at an open house, hopefully there's more communication of information.
Agreed.
And at this point, I'm very supportive. I think we need to do what we need to do, so I would like to be in a position of being able to sell that to people. I've already had some communications and, from people who have heard, but I think we could do much more.
Sure.
So I applaud that. I think that's a good idea.
If anybody has any questions in the meantime, they're free to call or email me or I'm available to help answer questions about property tax or any other question regarding the budget. So,
Nate likes his job.
We are so glad. Any other questions, discussion?
So that's typo, we'll get a new one out. Let's
I
look at
would
the calendar.
make a motion that we approve the tentative budget as it has been presented.
And set the public
And
hearing.
set the
Public hearing for June.
public hearing for June 7? I thought that's when
Yeah.
we were going to do the meeting.
Yes.
Yes, but also the public hearing.
Oh, during city council that night.
Yes.
At 7 PM. So
At
June
At 7
7
p.m.
PM.
Okay, at
Yes.
7 PM.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Meekum, sorry. Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes.
And June 7th, we'll talk about, Nate will have a better idea what dates will be available for the Truth and Taxation meeting. Just to get for the 2 new council members,
Okay,
you can't have, there can only be one Truth and Taxation meeting scheduled that night. So if, let's say Layton is increasing their property taxes, we cannot be on the same night as Layton, so, oh, go ahead.
Really?
countywide?
it's, we can't
South
have
Davis, I
any-
said South Davis Fire, South
Yeah,
Davis
so
Rec.
any competing, so
Yeah, if
anybody that appears on a Centerville's residence property tax, so if the
school district.
Okay.
the fire or the school
So
district.
not Layton, sorry.
Anybody
Fair
that's
enough.
on
So
the county
mosquito
tax
abatement?
assessment.
Yep.
You have to
can't
have
it on
your
the same night.
own night.
Correct.
Got it, that makes sense.
And we also can only have the truth and taxation and the budget as part of that agenda. We can't have any other business items.
And so it'll be an off-council night unless we don't want to talk about anything else that.
Well, it's like it was last year. I mean, they got around, they were assigning nights because everything was so crowded, and I would imagine that most
It'll be the same.
cities are having the same issues that
It's going
we're
to be
having.
crowded again.
Okay,
We're gonna try to get
Good
a jump
to
on
know.
it, and we'll try to keep people informed of available dates
sure.
as far as that scheduling goes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 2.
Oh, Jennifer has a.
Oh,
You unplug.
thank you. You are doing a great job of keeping me on track. Okay, item number 2 is also a public hearing for zoning code amendments for water efficient landscaping. Corey?
Thank you, council members. Indicated this as a public hearing on a zone text amendment. This is sponsored in the report by the city council in response to the generalized flip your strip program and the issue of the city becoming a qualifying entity for that program. Planning Commission has reviewed it and made a positive recommendation in the format that's presented it to you. It is coming to you as a individual section in the landscaping ordinances of the zoning code, and it is coming to you in the form of a highly recommended program rather than a mandatory program. Part of that discussion occurred at staff level, and then we had that small discussion with the Planning Commission. So to lead you up to why it ended up in that format. The Flip the SIP program is an independent program, and you're very aware of the idea that you can be reimbursed a certain amount of money per square foot if you replace your park strip. You also adopted and amended the park strip landscape ordinance in the streets code to kind of mimic the opportunity to redo your park strip. Excuse me. One thing that's very nuanced, I know I'm talking large, but very nuanced to know the difference, is under the Flip the Strip program, in the definition of mulching, they allow all kinds of mulches in your park strip under that program.
Want that?
I may. In the proposed, not in the proposed, in the adopted park strip ordinance already previously passed by the council, wood chips is not an allowed mulching system in that park strip due to them washing out and getting into the storm drain. So we do allow rock at a certain size. And so I think that's something that may be a communication issue, that if somebody looks at the park strip or the Flip the Strip program looking at mulches in their program. They come to the city and get approval for the changes in the park strip by the Public Works Department. There may be, hey, you can't do the wood chips. It's the rock only. Finally getting to the drink. Thank you, Brent. So that's a little nuance that's kind of a little bit different than the flip the strip.
Or before you leave that area, maybe one of the things that we can do is, I've read through the flip the strip, and it does require that you have a site inspection before you flip it, and you have to attend the class, and you have to have 50% plantings in order to qualify. So it's not just tear it out and ask for the money. Perhaps we talk to the people running the program, and when they do that site inspection, we just tell them to make them aware that mulch is not allowed.
Right. Right, and you are correct in the idea that they want to replace the park strip with, I believe it's drip irrigation is the expectation, not the bubblers, and they also require some plantings, and they require the inspection to ensure that you have met the guidelines, and that's for existing park strips of turf. So if you're doing something next month in a new park strip that doesn't have existing turf, my understanding is you don't qualify for flip the strip. It's an existing turf planted park strip.
And it has to be alive.
And it has to be alive.
So
So
cannot
I
be
have a
dead.
question on your park strip. If I don't want to do flip your strip, can I just change my park strip? Do I have to have the city come and look at it or okay it or approve it or?
There
I
is a
just
city
change it
ordinance,
tomorrow?
and I don't know how Public Works, maybe Mike can comment on that. I don't know how Public Works is tracking and monitoring, because yes, you can change your park strip, it just has to meet certain guidelines, and I don't know how much is on your honor, or how much is a permit.
Robin just asking the question that if you choose not to take part of the flip the strip program, do you still have to come to the Public Works to get a
Right, you
permit
gotta
to do
take
that?
out a permit, free of charge permit.
So I can't just pull my grass out and put rocks in if I wanted to?
You can,
No,
you just have to
you
go in
get
and
the
get a
permit,
permit
then
But
you
I have
can
to
go
get a
ahead and do
permit.
that.
at no charge.
The permit just tells you what.
I've seen several people doing it. I wouldn't have thought, oh, I've got to get permission to do that. So I
Believe
was
how
just
many
curious.
permits we've got lately. Mark's just being inundated with them right now, so.
How many of them are coming from the actual property owners versus their contractors?
Mark would be better to answer that, but I would say a third are coming from contractors.
Yeah.
So, and I've got a couple that, as soon as this is passed, I'm supposed to send them an email and say, yeah, okay, you're good to go. And they're gonna go work through Weaver Basin on it somehow. I'm not sure how they're doing it, but.
Now, doesn't this have to go to Weaver, you take this ordinance to Weaver Basin, if this council passes it, doesn't it go to
So-
Weaver Basin and then they have to agree that
Yes,
we've
so if
met
you-
their criteria?
The procedure will be, if you guys passed it tonight, then Corey will send it up to John Perry and the Weaver Basin crew. And then as soon as they say, okay, we approve it, then we will get it out, Bryce will get it out in the newsletter, whatever we can. I've got some of those people who've been continue asking me, we'll get it out to them. So we'll do our best to notify them, but yet we will be on their list. So people that go
We
to their
have been
website
turned
will be able
down
to see
several
it.
times.
Yeah.
So back to Corey. Corey, how confident, well, sorry, Bryce, did you have something you want to say? Sorry.
That park strip application I've been working on with Mark, and it'll be digitized, so it'll be a lot easier to get out. It'll be done in a couple days, so.
Okay,
Oh, good, thank you.
thank you.
Corey, so how confident are you that the language, the draft amendment, will be compliant with Weber Basin?
That's a great question.
I'll answer that question, Corey.
Because one of my questions is, throughout the draft, the word should be used. So, hey, you should use this and you should do that. If I'm at Weber Basin and I'm doing the Flip the Strip program, am I going to say, no, Centerville City, you need to have, instead of should, shall?
Yeah.
I don't know, that's my question. So I don't want to approve something tonight that's just going to get rejected.
No, and I
by
think that's part
Weber
of what I
Basin.
prepared for a policy decision, but Brant, you're welcome to
But
step in.
it'd be nice to reference other cities.
So
Like,
let
if we
me give
coordinate
it
with the
historical. So we had this conversation with John Perry last year regarding this program. We were interested in it. We were already looking into passing the ordinance to improve and make it more friendly for alternatives besides grass to be in the park strip. So we met with Weber Basin, they submitted the language to us. Well, we met as staff and Corey tore it apart, in all honesty, because what it does is it puts all the enforcement on the city to verify that we're enforcing Weber Basin's program. Now, what we do, we're not disputing that the language in there is really, citizens should be following this language and being smarter water-wise. But we just couldn't proceed because of just how much, they weren't just dictating Park Strip, they were dictating the entire property, which would then require Corey to verify that certain percentage of the property is meeting it, including their backyard. So we'd be, a single family comes in, now we're requiring a single family to submit landscaping plans. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Corey, but now Corey is now the enforcer of this, and it's not just Park Strip anymore, and we thought that was just too much encroaching on our local authority. So we pushed back. I've attended the class with Weber Basin. I met with Dave Rice, who taught the class, and we had a chat afterwards. I said, look, we'd love to participate, but your language is just going too far. And he said, we'll work with you. We'll find a way. So Mike and I met thinking that they were going to work with us, and they weren't going to budge on a number of items. And so it wasn't really working with us. However, we are essentially adopting a similar ordinance to Layton, which is just that, which is encouraged. And Layton is a part of this program, and they encourage water-wise landscaping. So we've essentially adopted all of the components of Layton except for the industrial park side, where there's a requirement of 10%, no more than 10% landscaping. Now, we didn't feel that was necessary to include in our ordinance because Weber Basin does not provide water to our industrial park, therefore why would we include it in our ordinance? Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So that's probably the only difference, is we did not include the industrial park, and so that's where we feel our ordinance meets all the conditions, because essentially it's identical to Layton. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
So short story, we hope that we'll comply because we're using
we have a very good argument
a
if
template
they
for
don't.
another municipality that
in
is
part of that,
participating in the
in part of that intense staff discussion, they just said, here's 5 model ordinances.
Right.
And I'm the one that perused them and went bing, 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 bing. 2 communities adopt a should, or highly recommended is what it's called. Now, that was,
communities adopted shall.
I think there was 3 communities in their model ordinance that did the shalls. So, and some of them did it only shalls for their commercial versus their residential also into it. And so you know, and I think that's what takes you back to this whole policy discussion. You know, the first thing is about Weber Basin is they serve direct to shareholders from Chase Lane to the north roughly. They do supply other entities with water. Dual Creek is another one that supplies the water. They have their percentages that they're cutting back because they put it to those suppliers. But you know, one of the frustrations to talk about is that if your service area in Centerville is only X area, but you're requiring something in an area you don't serve, you know, how is that going to interface with each other? The second one that comes to the policy internally here to Centerville, one for clarity, we do not require turf anywhere in the city. You do not have to plant grass. Now, that's not to say our ordinance is perfect, because I can point out some of the flaws in our landscaping ordinance, but we don't require turf. Second, 2 parts, part 2A is we do not require you to landscape your residential lot in Centerville. There is no requirement to plant. You've heard of other cities, once you move in, you have 18 months. We do not have such an ordinance. Now, developers will put it on to protect their interest in the selling of the lots, but we do not require it. The only thing we require...
MCC&Rs require it.
Yeah, they may, but we do not require it. We just require your weeds to be 12 inches or less. So that's one area in a policy is that if we went to a mandatory place, we're now not only from the enforcement and who's going to review it, and one neighbor does it right and another one neighbor does it wrong, and it calls Mike, and then Mike refers him to me because everything gets referred to Corey.
Mike confirmed that. Did you see that in your peripheral vision?
I'm the Mike. He'll eat anything. Live cereal. Just he says Corey will eat live cereal. Is to step into, are we going to regulate single-family development in their landscaping plans. And is it a first-time initial review? Or is it somebody moves in and they want to change it, and we're out watching if you're changing it? As Roz says in Monsters, Inc., we're always watching you.
Right.
You know, so that's a policy change that I think is significant, given the temperament that I've known in the community. But if we want to go there, that's great, because I don't disagree with conservation. The second is if we go into the commercial areas, and we do not require turf in the commercial areas, but the flaw of the ordinance is that when you put plantings in, at maturity of all the plants, it should be 75% coverage, except for the west side where we do a drought. We always encourage drought tolerant, but you can do xeriscape out on the west side because we don't have secondary water out there. 75% plantings is pretty intense. So the default and the easiest and the cheapest is turf with some planting beds. And the flaw in it is once you do that much planting and it's not turf, the lifespan of you maybe get a decade if you're lucky out of your plants before you're either stressing them because of pruning or they just overgrow themselves. And so I think we can fix some flaws, but again, it comes back to landscaping plans do come in on a commercial industrial basis. Our staff is reviewing them. They're obligated to maintain that. And it's easy to default to turf in that landscaping ordinance. The question becomes on the intensity of Weber Basin's program is that they get into evaluating all the sprinkler heads and the type you use and the smart controllers. And that to me is just beyond what city staff can manage and monitor for and on behalf of conservation. We could see better ways to looking at conservation and encouragement. So
Corey, I'm going to read between the lines a little bit because, and I think you're maybe answering a question.
Without being direct?
Yes, because of maybe what other people have tried to come in and say, and that is, hey, I'm going to go totally water-wise. I'm going to hardscape my entire yard. I want to put a sport court in, whatever else.
Exactly.
And they're being told no because of the impervious surface calculation. Correct. So when you say, hey, you don't need to do turf, what you're saying is you don't need to do turf, but you need to do some pervious surface.
Correct.
And I think to Mike, and I think I already know the answer to this question, but we do that because of groundwater preservation. Is that a
as well as
statement?
runoff? We calculate how much runoff comes out of a lot. And it's not fair because lots are different sizes, but we average at.
So here's a follow-up question. This might be one of your fixes. What if a community member says, look, again, I don't want even gravel hardscape. I still want that sport court. Can I collect that water and do a subsurface detention and let it percolate in the soil, similar to what happens in commercial projects, underwater detention that then goes into the groundwater?
Well, now you're getting into Mike's expertise on rainwater collection.
And I'm not saying rainwater collection, I'm saying detention that then percolates down into the groundwater.
Well, we already do that when you get to the like if you had a middle of a meets and bounds lot in the middle of the city, hasn't been built on for decades, somebody wants to build onto it. We watch already on their plans the stormwater runoff calculated. I think it's a 25-year storm.
Yes.
25-year storm.
For detention.
And we do require some type of berming and detention to filtrate it back into the ground already.
Correct, but I don't know in our city if we allow that to just be at grade or if we could allow them to do it below grade.
The below grade, I think, is in the gray area. If you meet what's the incentive if you have an impervious surface requirement? There's not an incentive to build the underground system.
Okay. Enough said, I think.
Mike, way off.
So
this is your expertise, and I'm answering.
No, we dealt with some of that today.
So, Mike, you told me earlier tonight about someone who's putting in artificial turf.
Right.
Is he putting that in over dirt, or is he putting
No,
that in
it's
over
a process that they do it, but it still allows the moisture to go down through. So they have certain standards depending on what type you get. This one guy, the guy that I was referring to had 4 inches. It's kind of like a kitty litter, which the water will run down through into the ground, so it's
Bottom will be
very
like
much
sand.
allowing the water to go into the ground.
As long
But the
as it's not
same as
directly
lawn,
on clay,
in
you're okay.
my opinion.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I was just curious.
he's just not gonna be watering it, which is an added, something to
no,
go into
yeah,
the
he's-
ground.
Okay.
So is the artificial turf, I mean, I've been asked about the artificial turf too, an entire yard in artificial turf, as long as they've got the correct type of drainage so that whatever rainfall is,
That's a point of another, could be interpreted as a flaw of the ordinance. The artificial landscaping section created out of a narrow viewpoint, I don't think it had anything to do with palm trees, but created out of a narrow viewpoint, restricted uses of artificial landscaping way back when to no more than, I think it's like 10 or 15% of your yard area.
Right.
So technically, if you go in, and that was all areas of the city, we can probably need to change that to some extent, and I know that there are citizens already preparing an amendment to that. And so we likely seeing an amendment to that soon on it. But the concern with the artificial turf is percolation. Don't do it right, it's gonna add runoff into the street
Right,
system.
you gotta do the right
Right.
base material.
So the great thing is we're recognizing that we're a dry state, right? We're one of the driest states in the country. But Vegas, Nevada, Arizona, artificial turf, I mean, you see it quite often, artificial turf in the entire yard.
yeah.
And I think it's time that I think it's great we're seeing residents recognizing that now instead of, because you can have a nice lawn year-round with artificial.
And I would go, I'm not an authority, but I'm going off what this gentleman told me. He was $65,000 in doing his whole yard. He says that he'll never get his money back out of it. He says, I'm doing this just strictly for water conservation. I won't have to put anything down, but there's maintenance that goes with that too. It's not just, he was telling me he power raked it, which I thought was pretty interesting, but it makes sense after he got done explaining the whole process to me. There's weekly raking that they do to keep it looking nice and stuff.
It'll start laying flat over time. So in Arizona, I had artificial, and I currently have a playground that's artificial, and its install is $12 to $15 a square foot now.
He paid 14 is what he told me.
So it's not cheap. It's not a matter of getting your money back. It's a matter of doing.
Corey, would you then, I mean, I already suggested you work with our Trails Committee earlier tonight, but it sounds like you are even admitting that maybe you have some work to do
Yes.
some fixes and recommendations to bring back to
I
Planning
think-
Commission and then
Right, I
City
think
Council.
outside of the qualifying participation goal that this ordinance currently drafted is trying to do.
We're just
we
trying
have-
to flip the strip
Yeah,
down, right?
we have
Right.
some other issues that I think we can improve on in the water conservation area from a zoning ordinance standpoint, so. But I think that really kind of, in interest of time, unless you have questions, that's why it's ending up in the section as highly recommended. We're thinking that it meets two of the model ordinances that were provided to the city. I don't know, once it goes to them, because those ordinances were adopted before we got into the mega drought discussions that have taken place. So when you say how confident I am, I'm confident that we can say you let other communities do it, why are you not letting us do it?
Right.
However, I'm not confident that their internal policies
Have changed.
have changed and may want a more aggressive program in order to be a qualifying city. So that's my caveat of concern.
So do we have to make a motion to open it for public hearing?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing, unless anybody else has, I don't want to cut anybody off. I just know we have somebody from the public here
Yes.
that's already listened to us.
Who has been very patient. Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any way to keep the public here to listen to budget.
So sorry, you've been really patient.
You learned a lot that you didn't necessarily come forward, didn't you?
First thing I learned is I don't really want to be on city council.
We're gonna talk.
you're a smart man right from the
You
start.
showed up tonight, that's a first step.
Again, it's Nathan Woodbury from Centerville here. I had one question around the wood mulching. Is that part of the ordinance that does allow for wood mulching now where before it was not?
We'll answer that after the public hearing's closed, but yeah, if you have any other questions, so, the way you work is ask your questions, then when public hearing's closed, we'll answer all your
Understand.
questions.
So that was just one question, more of a clarification on my side, because it was being said as if it was one or the other, and I'm not real familiar with what the current status is. I just want to support this piece of ordinance, just simply because we are in a very dry state. Anything, I have a fairly long front yard. My yard is wider than it is deep. And I have, just on my park strip, it's about 160 feet, which translates to about a sprinkler head about every 7.5 feet. And I do have a wide driveway, so there's some that's not being watered. But that's a lot of water that's never, I mean, it's for grass, it's walked on to go across it. It's never played on, it's never used for anything otherwise. We have neighbors who have literally concreted in their park strips, which I don't know anything about that, by the way.
You've officially told on your neighbors.
Yeah, that happened.
You chose to be part of the public hearing.
But, and I've looked at all the different things. I don't know if I've misread. I've talked with Mr. Rice at Weber Basin, and he stated that the language that they had given Centerville City, that they're hoping that they will adopt the same language as some of these other cities because that's what they need to be able to approve it. So, Councilmember Summer Hayes, I think I'm fairly confident, based off of my conversations with him, that if this is what is the case, that it should be approved. And the last thing I'll state is that I think it's more important that there's a sign from government to say that we support these measures. I know we live in a county and a state that is very conservative in nature, that doesn't want government to tell us what to do. And I still think it's important that we still have the leadership from our government to say, hey, listen, we can be better and we can make choices on an individual basis. And I think this little ordinance change helps to incentivize people to do the right thing collectively, because we need water for everything. So that's all I gotta say.
Sounds like a campaign slogan I just heard down there.
Yeah. It's coming, you guys. Thank you, Mr. Woodbury. Anyone else?
Might be somebody online.
Is there anyone on Zoom?
Someone did log on, but they said they're not here for the
Okay.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes.
Did you want to answer the question, Corey, or do you want me?
I don't.
It's a
Either way, I
Corey
was
show
prepared.
tonight.
I'm just used to giving Mike a break from being here. He's always up here last.
He just
few
gave you a
meetings.
thumbs up. He's appreciative.
I'll answer and then give you a break. So, if you recall from our original conversations, we had concerns about mulch, because the drainage, if, water, we have some heavy rain, it'll go down our storm drains and cause issues in our storm drain. I will say that Weber Basin does encourage at least mulch. They're okay with mulch in the park strip. They're okay with even hardscape. So again, if you recall, we allow flagstone, but not mortared in flagstone. One of our concerns, of course, is if you have artificial turf, concrete, flagstone, which we're already aware of some concrete, by the way, in park strips. But if we have to go in to access the utilities, we're the ones who are responsible for replacing that. So if we do go to this direction of allowing anything permanent like that we make sure the property owner is fully aware that they're the ones that are going to bear the cost. Now
Does our ordinance read that way right now?
Currently, yeah, we don't allow hardscapes.
No, does our ordinance allow, you just made a caveat that they have to pay for it. if
We
they
don't allow
choose
that right
to.
now, not at all.
That's what I'm saying. If we were to go that route.
If we were to go that route.
Could we make that caveat for
But,
somebody?
so, I mean, how often do we access a park strip to replace utilities? Not very often. But when we do, we're concerned about those hardscapes. Mike's gonna, I don't know, beat me up.
Well,
I'm answering this incorrectly.
kind of the reason why Randy went away from the concrete the concrete in the park strip is because, number one, if they do color, we can't match it, so they're unhappy. And the other thing, it does take time to get down through there, and it's nice for other utilities to be able to get in there. It's one of my concerns after hearing it's $14 a square foot to put down. What is it if I gotta go pull out a meter box or fix something? you know, what's the cost to us? You know, and that's for a topic down the road, you know, or my feeling, if you're putting that kind of stuff in, maybe you burden the cost of putting it back, and that's. what
And
that
our
is-
cost to access the utilities,
Yeah,
right?
and I agree with that.
But again, we're already at a point where we have residents installing hardscapes, concrete in the park strip without talking to Mike, that we see it around town. Now, an enforcement could go in there and require that property and remove that concrete right now. We sure could, right? Do we? No, but what we're doing is a broken window. And this is what I worry about, is that we're allowing these things to occur and we're not enforcing anything. So I think our ordinance could allow potentially for mulch if you wanted to, or artificial. We would still just discourage the mulch, but artificial grass, sure. But there needs to be that caveat that
The real problem with
if there's an
artificial-
added cost, you're responsible to access the utilities and you're responsible for the repairs. We'll do our best to keep it simple. Anyway, sorry.
My problem with artificial, you know, mulch and things like that is, you know, it rains hard, it gets up in the gutter, it ends up in the catch basin, which we pay a huge amount of money to clean it out. Example, I was out, you know, looking around town today and come across the guy that had pulled out his lawn, and it was topsoil, but it was washed out for like a 30-foot stretch. And we all know where that dirt went, you know, because it wasn't on site no more.
Yeah.
You know, and so those are the costs that we're trying to keep down by, you know, allowing certain things in there. That's why ours is 1.5 minus, or 1.5 plus to 6.5 minus is what we go with there.
We like our ordinance the way it is.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
really
say,
do.
there's no reason why, even though Weaver Basin says it's okay to have wood mulch, there's no reason why we can't just say no to that.
Right.
We like our ordinance the way it is.
And I can't tell you how many bags of mulch we bought when we flushed fire hydrants. When we go through and flush hydrants, we're always going over trying to find as close as we can get mulch to put back what we just washed out from flushing a fire hydrant. That has to happen. That's what's nice about lawn. That's what's nice about, you know, permeable surfaces and even concrete, is when you do that, it just runs it out in the street without making a mess. But the bad thing is too, when it's mulch and that, you know, it runs down the street, well, our guys gotta go down and clean it back up afterwards. So, you know, that's kind of why we're not in favor of mulch. I mean, it's an added cost and added time to us to do our duty, to take care of things.
And then just one clarification, we've been talking primarily, it sounds like, the park strip mulching. Once you hit your private land, you mulch as you see fit.
Right, just in the park strip.
Right.
And then the language, I tried to adopt all those principles that were in the different model ordinances and just put them concisely into one section. I'm hoping that if we're disqualified, it's not the larger picture of mandatory, that we missed a suggestion somewhere that I didn't see and they send it back and we have to, you know.
Corey, from a logistical, practical implementation, my worry, and again, I think you're heading down the right path because we've modeled it after cities, is if they reject it, and then we have to go back through this whole process again, how many weeks are we losing because they reject our language? We can't qualify as a city for the strip program, we have to go to the planning commission again, city council
Yes,
again.
the
and
minimum
all of a
time is a
sudden-
month and a half.
Yeah.
We've lost a month and a half.
That was part of my concern about,
Yeah.
let's really hope that, I really wanted to make sure that,
You
I
know,
hope
and
so
it-
too, but I don't think we can change our language because we don't have,
No,
Corey doesn't have all
we
day to
can.
go out and.
We can.
and
I'm
do-
just-
We may not be able to flip the strip and it's not our fault if Weaver Basin won't allow us to.
I don't disagree with that. I just,
I'm hoping it all works out.
yeah.
And I would make a
Yes.
statement, I know Corey spent a ton of time on this, much more than I have. But, you know, the main thing is if I think Corey can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've sent 3 proposals up to him. Am I off on that one?
We came up with some early drafts to say, are you thinking something like this? And then they ultimately just said, here's some model ordinances, and left us to our own.
Oh, okay.
We've been
Sure,
working on it
it doesn't sound like they were very helpful.
Not from my standpoint.
Okay.
They've been very helpful. We're on public, I'm just kidding. They did meet with us and they are very helpful. We were hoping that they'd be a little more flexible with what we've already passed.
Right.
But I will say they have been very helpful in helping us get to this point, which
Yeah,
Mike and
for
I
discussions
appreciate.
between
Yeah.
Mike and them, they probably have. For me, in the vacuum of, here's model ordinances, figure it out.
If there was a requirement saying
You
we
would
are
have said,
required,
give me something that you actually will approve.
if the language they they had was to require us to do the items, then we definitely wouldn't be here today, just because we felt like that went too far. Now, again, we support what they're saying. We agree with the educational side. Going to that point, we do believe, again, to be better, it is important for us to help educate residents and show them there are other alternatives besides what you've been doing for all these years. And that's what we need to do, and so we're trying to create that with these ordinances. So.
And we're coming up, as far as staff, coming up on a year. In August, there will have been a year that we've been working on this. So it's not like we haven't been doing anything, and that's what I tell people when they call. It's not like we've not been doing anything. We've been trying to move forward, but it's been a tough ordeal.
And just one last, I have two columns in my head when I talk to you. I have a left-hand column, which I'm really thinking in my shorthand language, and then my right-hand column trying to be disciplined. But one thing that gets a little frustrating from a staff planner and all the battles we have with the state legislature, what we have to do in the ordinance construct, going to a should doesn't have a lot of teeth. It's great for an educational purposes, but it's always uncomfortable to just adopt ordinances that say should because they don't have teeth. But from an educational standpoint, it's good. The other thing that is struggling with is there's always a battle between what a person buys their property and what they desire to do with it and the community interest. And to prove a community interest is available to us, federal law and health, welfare, and safety, supported by the LUDMA Act of the state legislature. But they continually remind planners to be careful about encroaching into that private sector world. And now we have an issue that's real and a community need. And so now we have this balance of how far do you go into that property realm of a person's property and decide what is health, safety, and welfare. I think it's arguable that conservation of water is a health, safety, and welfare. The question is how intensive of an intrusion should it be? I think we stay on a conservative mode doing the highly recommended.
And then how much does it take, how much more staff time hiring a code enforcement officer to enforce that?
Right, and
So now
that's
we're
what I'm
talking
not
about
in
creating
for.
positions, maybe not one, but maybe 1.5 to enforce these new regulations. So that's why we're saying we would like to keep our ordinance and the should at this point, but we could see where it goes from here.
The problem that I have with shall is it becomes overly prescriptive. And in this particular case where we're trying to move people from an education standpoint, I think we should continue with the should in the ordinance. And also just to point out, the flip the strip rebate's $1.25 per square foot. So it's not an extreme incentive for a lot of people to wait on that. I've seen a lot of people doing their conversions now. It's a great perk, but I'm not worried about the ordinance not being able to meet that. If it doesn't, not the end of the world for us. And actually, I would, at that point, I'm just going to motion that we approve and adopt ordinance 2022-10. I mean, we've been at this a while. I've been working at this for a couple of years. So I think we're good to move on. No law is perfect, but we can start from this point.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Let's take a roll call vote. Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
And do we make a subsequent recommendation or follow Corey's follow-up that he's going to start working on retooling,
Yeah.
fixes and so
I
forth?
I think that's a good
Based
plan
off of
as
his
well.
own assessment?
Yeah.
And I do think what George brought up is really important too, when we talk about, would we come back and change it more? People aren't gonna get the rebate that it would cost us to hire a code enforcement in order
Exactly.
to do it, so there's
yes.
no way that it's gonna work its way out. We're not gonna pay a code enforcement $100,000 when our residents are gonna get $20,000 back. That would be a really stupid thing to do.
I completely agree with that. I was gonna say, it's a very different conversation if we have to change that ordinance to a shall.
Yeah,
That becomes.
I don't think I could ever agree to that.
That becomes way too problematic, so. Okay, let's move on to item 3, municipal code amendments prohibiting use of culinary water for irrigation. This is Mike.
I'm subbing for Lisa, so I hope I do as good a job as she would do. So, so Lisa, after City Council had talked about revising this ordinance and looking more into it, and getting into the drought-tolerant landscaping and stuff like that, and the use of culinary water versus irrigation water. He's drafted this up. I assume you've had a chance to look at it, but it kind of diversifies a little bit, making if somebody has irrigation water, they can't use culinary water to irrigate with. That helps us out a lot in cross connections and things like that. So to me, that was really important. But, basic guidelines, I think you guys have probably had a chance to read that. It'd probably be best for me to answer questions. But it's setting some guidelines of what you can do, what you can't do, hose watering, things like that. There is a lot of water. As a matter of fact, in a fixture count on a house, in the plumbing code, the outside tap is one of the highest fixture counts, so it's like 2.5. So there's a lot of water that can go out that way. Now, it's not my envision that I'm going to go out and get upset at somebody or whatever. We're going to teach them that that's not the right way to go if we went that way. So I would probably just throw it out if the questions that you guys may have, or Brent, did I miss some of the key points there? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward ordinance.
Yeah, so originally, we do believe, Lisa and I believe there is language in our code that doesn't allow this, but it could be interpreted differently. It's not clear. So Lisa prepared this to make it very clear that if you have access to irrigation, don't use culinary for irrigating lawns, gardens, or landscaped areas. Lisa and I have debated, does this go too far? I do feel it's very strict, but we want to go to this point to see what the issues might be, and we can back off it. For example, gardens, again, 2.5, I mean, you can use a lot of water out of your tap off the side of your house. So we want to go to this point and see if this is too far. We'll listen to the residents and we'll make adjustments. But we think it's very important to go to this point and make it very clear that you cannot use culinary. Now, we will be monitoring culinary usage, and if we see anything out of whack, again, we're not coming out to punish those residents, but we do want to educate them and say, hey, we need your help in conserving water, and please help us out. So with that, I have in my city manager report I was going to talk about, but I'll talk about it now. Mike has brought up in the past, but we have our meter reader who works how many hours on average a week right now?
It's decreasing as we put meters in, so I'm guessing probably around 30 or less.
30 or less a week? A month?
Oh, I'm sorry, a month, sorry.
Yeah, so we'd like to use this employee to help enforce and educate. So Mike's calling her the water wrangler. And so just so you're aware, that is going to be one of those budgetary items that might come before you as an increase, because we really need some help enforcing. It's a lot less to have her do it versus Mike or Mark going out enforcing it pay-wise. So,
Agreed.
And she's excited to do it and get a few more hours. So again, I think this is an important time to help educate.
And I would emphasize the reason for water wrangler instead of a
Water
water enforcer is we want to educate. I just don't want to go out and get upset at somebody or whatever. I want her to go out and educate. If she runs up into a problem, she's shutting it down, she's going to come and get one of us and we'll go take care of it. So that's kind of why I use wrangler. I really don't want her enforcing, I want her educating. And she is an educator.
And if she's unable to solve the issue at her level, she's not going to be confrontational at all, but if it does get confrontational, then that's where Mike and Mark will need to step in, or Dave, I should say.
Right, Dave.
To help, again, just to educate, not.
This is not scheduled for a public hearing?
No.
This is not scheduled for a public hearing.
Okay. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So
Go
ahead. I was going
I
to make a
do want
motion.
to jump in on this one. And this goes to the point about how we were just talking about how no law is perfect. There's a loophole in this one that I see that is going to only be happening when we have somebody who's had their water cut off from, they've had, if they're dual crate 2 violations or Weaver water, the 4 violations. Under the section 9.02.205, it is unlawful any person to use culinary water for irrigation purposes or systems when secondary water is available for the property. So if you've been shut down, that doesn't qualify as available for the property, does it?
In my mind, I would still go back. They have the opportunity to
Have access to it, whether you got shut down, that's
Right.
entirely up to you. But I do see your point, George, and I'll bring it up with Lisa and tell her that you challenge her ordinance.
I definitely did, because available and access are 2 different words, just like shall and should.
That's a good point. Good catch.
Yeah.
We'll look at that. That's
I
great.
do agree with Councilman McEwen on that, because we have had one instance in town where we've had to deal with that, where, you know, it was a fight between the irrigation company and the person, and so.
What it comes down to is our interpretation, our intent is one thing, and that's what we'll be enforcing. But
What if we go back and just make a minor change?
Can we make an adjustment on the fly? Yeah, as part of our motion?
Just say is or has been available for the property.
Do you like that language, George, that Bill just said?
I don't know if Lisa's ears are pricking up without us here. I mean, I'm okay to pass this and then we could just run that theoretical. I mean, really what we're dealing with is we're dealing with the case of somebody who's been belligerent enough with the two water companies to get shut off. So they're not going to be complying anyway.
We can make a motion that says the intent and we leave Lisa the flexibility.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, we can pass it with the.
With the spirit of the
If Lisa wants to fix that, she can.
Yeah, I like that.
If I could just make one more comment, we did have one individual that had irrigation water that wanted city water, and it took us a ton of time to convince him, no, you need to be on your irrigation water. So this gives us the teeth where it's cut and dry.
I will share that there are other cities that, if a resident wants to connect to culinary water for irrigation purposes, it is permitted, but they're on a totally different rate structure. And it's actually more flexible. You pay a higher amount on the culinary side for culinary use, but if you have use it for secondary, your tier's a little bit differently. And anyway, I'm not proposing we go that route. I would discourage it, but that's where some of these residents get it from, as other cities do have.
There are residents that would rather irrigate with or water their lawns with culinary because they think that Weber Basin or Jewel Creek have weeds in their water, which they do. But so they like to water with water that's been purified so that they're not bringing it in. So just when you say, why would anybody want to use culinary water, that's one of the reasons here in Centerville is people would, if you've got enough money, you can.
And you have access to it year-round.
That's a really good point. I still like this ordinance for the fact that it protects our
I do too.
groundwater resource, and
I do too.
so I think it's a good
I think it's a great
move.
ordinance.
Yeah. Any discussion?
I'm really okay to proceed with it with the current language and then, give staff instructions to Lisa to look at, does this deal with our belligerent person who's been shut off and now wants to convert over to city water because the two irrigation companies shut them down.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good, George.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-11.
Second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote. We'll start with you, Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
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 And then also make a suggestion to Lisa that she look at the potential need for expanding that phrase in the event of a difficulty.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay, motion passes. We'll move on to item number 4. This is our Juneteenth National Freedom Day. We'll turn the time over to Nate. Jake. Sorry.
Nate was like,
Nate's
what?
like, I am?
That's all
I'm
right.
so sorry, Jake.
Well, I think that Ms. Sawyer did a great job. I don't know if she's still on, but she did a great job kind of explaining the purpose and the reason why it's a federal and it's a state holiday. So, and we discussed that last time as well. So I don't think we need to go there as much. We tabled this, we're bringing it back. And so what I'd like to do is give you some further information that we promised to bring forth. One of those things is what other cities are doing, as well as the state itself. And there was a survey that went out asking, and it wasn't actually us, it was Harriman City that did it. So I was able to pull that and update that. And that survey, there was 53 that responded to it. And this was cities and the state of Utah. There weren't any counties or special districts or anything like that in that, so it's just purely cities. And of those 53, 29 said yes, they are going to adopt Juneteenth as an additional holiday. 2 said no, they weren't going to adopt it as a holiday. 4 were adopting it, but they were swapping the day with a different holiday. And then 18 are like us, trying to make that decision whether or not to adopt Juneteenth as a holiday.
And this
as
is
a city holiday.
effective as of a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. And thank you to Ms. Sawyer. She's kind of updated us a little bit. So I was actually able to update on the fly some of those that she pointed out have adopted Juneteenth as well. So I did update those numbers. So those are based on information she's given to us as well, like with Salt Lake and Ogden and South Salt Lake. And so the state of Utah, because we usually follow what the state does. The state of Utah they had 12 holidays. They now have 13 holidays. They follow pretty much the same ones that we do. The only difference is they don't have the day after Thanksgiving off. Instead, they have what's called a personal preference day. So that's a floating holiday. I'm not quite sure. There's some rules about how that one works. I'm not quite sure how that. Councilman McEwen may be able to explain a little bit better on that one. But they did add Juneteenth, making it a 13th holiday. So that's the further information I have. I think at this point it's turn it over to the council for discussion about what we're going to do here in Centerville.
I think just as a reference, the House on the bill, House Bill 238 was 71 ayes, 1 nay, and 3 abstentions. So overwhelming support from the state level.
So on the information that I have, do you have any questions for me, or I can take a seat and let you guys start discussing?
George, I'd like to hear George talk about that personal preference holiday with the state, just to understand that as part of the discussion.
The reason that comes into play is a lot of organizations in the state are called ISFs, or internal service funds, which means they actually have to bill other agencies for their income, if you will. And most agencies have to bill out at 84% availability. So when you add an extra holiday, that takes you below that threshold. And so that's where some of that complication comes in, because even though the holiday was accepted, there wasn't really a fiscal note that showed what the impact would be to the internal service fund. So that's why that's come up that way.
From a private sector perspective, I'll add a little bit of insight, because I work in the private sector. Our company has 12 observed holidays, one of which is Juneteenth, and Pioneer Day is also from a state perspective as well. So the ones that are not observed as paid holidays that we've had discussions before would have been Columbus Day, Veterans Day. So just for reference purposes.
My issue was never not supportive of Juneteenth. I was concerned about the number of holidays and noticed that city employees did have the day after Thanksgiving. So my initial thought was, I don't think it's prudent to expect City Hall to be open the day after Thanksgiving, but could they take personal leave on that day, vacation, instead, so that we kept it to 12 holidays I'm concerned about the 35% increase in property taxes, and then on top of that, saying, oh yeah, and by the way, we're gonna have one more holiday. I don't know that it's one more day. I don't know that it's that big of a deal. I think our employees will get their jobs done regardless of whether there's 12 holidays or 13. But that was the one thought that I had, was maybe still keep City Hall closed, but ask employees to use annual leave, or have some kind of floating personal preference day. That's my opinion, but.
I'm inclined to motion it as it is.
Okay. Do you guys have any thoughts? Anyone else want to discuss or ask Jake questions?
As I have talked to people, and I was significantly negative on this 4 weeks ago? Yeah, 4 weeks ago. Out of about a dozen companies that I have polled, 2/3 are adopting Juneteenth, 1/3 are not at this point. May happen in the future, they don't know. I guess the most telling was a conversation that I had with a person of color earlier this week, or last week, just asking what his views were. And he had some interesting thoughts that kind of swayed me, and so I have changed my view, and I'm going to support the resolution.
Any additional discussion?
I'll
Did you officially
yep.
make the motion?
No, I
or-
have not made the official
Okay.
motion. I'm excited to.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that we approve Resolution 2022-08, declaring June 19th as Juneteenth National Freedom Day and amending Section 4.090 of the Centerville Personnel Policies, designating Juneteenth National Freedom Day as a legal city holiday.
Second.
Okay, I do want to just clarify, it seems like I thought I heard Ms. Sawyer say that it was going to be a Monday holiday, is that
Observed
different?
on Monday.
Observed on
'cause
Monday
it's on
the
Sunday.
20th, because it's on Sunday.
Okay, but it will always follow the June 19th schedule, it's not going to be closest to,
It's not going to be a
some-
Monday holiday all the time.
No, if it shows up on Saturday, it'll be Friday.
Okay.
If it's during the week, it'll be
I
the
was
like
just saying
Veterans
with you, I thought, wait a minute,
Could I make a point of clarification?
uh-huh.
For the state holiday, the legislature, so they wouldn't have to float this date back and forth and it be constant moving, they decided to have it the Monday as a standing holiday, that Monday after Juneteenth, the Monday closest to Juneteenth.
Monday closest to.
Okay,
And we could do that too.
is
We
that,
could do that. I personally prefer that it stays on the 19th because it's associated with an actual date.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, it's just that then you've got state offices closed on the Monday, correct? And the city
Yeah,
is.
that's
Which
true.
which is frankly gonna drive private sector crazy. Because whether or not they have it, it's different,
We hate state
right?
overreach and we're complying to it
I'm
now.
I'm not complying to state overreach, I'm just saying
They're letting
consistency.
the tail wag the dog, shoot. Oh, Gina.
Here's the other thing.
Yeah, I'd love to, I mean, I've made the motion, so.
Apparently,
but
your
it's-
company, it's June 19th.
No, it's the 20th because.
Yes, but normally
It
it's the
lies on a Sunday.
19th, right? Unless the 19th's on a Sunday, which then it
I've
becomes.
just got our paid
got
holiday
one.
schedule.
Oh,
I
it
don't-
Stop
might be
this
on
week,
Monday. I would
this
think,
year.
I think it should be June 19th. That's what we're trying to give people so they think about it. But on the other
If
hand,
we're trying to recognize the day, we should recognize the day.
but the other hand is we can't close City Hall. I mean, the post office is going to be closed on one day. The City Hall is going to be closed on one day. The state, I mean, nobody's going to know who's open and
What
who's
what is
closed.
the federal holiday? Ms. Sawyer, can you,
Does the federal holiday follow the 19th or does it follow the Monday? Did the state?
It falls on the 19th for the federal holiday.
Okay, thank you. I'm inclined to stick with the 19th. My motion remains unamended.
okay. And we have a second. Shall we, any further discussion? Are we ready for a vote? I'm gonna
Before we
start-
vote, I'd like to solicit a little bit of
Sure.
Brian's observations on this as far as compliance with having it on the 19th, what that's going to do.
Okay,
I just want to clarify, Nate, I believe our ordinance states to observe on Monday. So,
always observe it on Monday?
that's
So
what
it is following
So
state.
you are following state.
Thank you. Okay.
So I've made
I'm gonna-
I've made a motion without reading the, well,
Well,
was
we
there,
didn't
was there,
discuss the
I don't know that we
specifics.
discussed that. I'm gonna make sure that,
So again, either way, I mean, I like the day of, again, just you take that moment and recognize why you have the time off.
Right.
But observing a Monday is a great benefit as well. And if Ms. Sawyer is saying that they have activities planned, and if they're going to observe the Monday every year, then I think it would be great for us city employees to be able to participate on that.
Right,
Betty,
that's a good point.
when will you plan on doing celebrations statewide then on the Mondays in the future?
We will be doing it the weekend, so hopefully it encompasses the 19th, and we will extend our celebration through Monday. So we have events on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Okay.
Okay, so
they're doing a
motion
weekend.
still remains unamended.
You're, which is celebrated on the 19th.
On the Monday.
On the Monday
Yes.
closest to the 19th,
That's correct.
every year.
We'll ask the state every year when they're recognizing.
That's correct.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. Are you still seconding that motion, Bill?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's,
It defeats the purpose. I'm sorry.
defeats the
It
purpose.
defeats the purpose. I mean, now we're just giving people an extra holiday. I was like Bill, I feel like when I did more studying on it, I wanted to support it. But I do think it defeats the purpose. I mean, now we're just trying to.
I don't disagree with you, Robin,
Giving a
except
holiday.
that if the state and associated organizations which are organizing observance, celebrations, et cetera, are doing that on those dates, it seems like it falls in line. That's my only reason is.
But she didn't really, I mean, she said this time it will be on the weekend.
she said that.
No, every year,
It will be
we
on the
celebrate the 19th. And we do Father's Day weekend, which is traditionally around the 19th. And because the state has designated Monday as that day, we will do the event on Monday as well.
Okay, so it'll always be the Monday after Father's Day is because it's around the 19th.
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? I'm going to start with you, Councilman Summerhays.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes.
Thank you all so much. And again, I will forward the agenda. We have a children's festival that we do that'll be on the 11th. So there are activities all month long.
Thank you so much. Thank you for participating and giving us some additional information. And yes, I would love to know when those celebration events are.
And just a note, this year we're honoring Blacks in the military because we fought in every war for freedom, even when we didn't have freedom ourselves. And so we thought it was very fitting on this first year that we would honor Juneteenth Fathers of Freedom.
That is amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, moving on to summary actions.
For what it's worth,
Sure.
it appears in the last 2 minutes looking that the federal holiday is not going to be the Monday.
No.
Yeah, she said that
Told us
it's
that.
going to be
Yeah.
the 19th. So it's,
That was the
state holiday
discrepancy.
is different than federal holiday.
Yeah. I make that
That's
observation. I'm not
crazy.
changing my vote. I'm not trying to change my vote.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she made that clarification. And that's why, part of the reason I left my motion unamended was because if we're in the state and it falls there and the local chapters that are helping organize Juneteenth celebrations are going to be focused on those weekends and on the Monday, it makes sense.
Yeah.
As opposed to.
But the problem that Robin observed is next year, next year you should be okay. The year after the next,
If it hits a Wednesday.
you'll have the post office on Tuesday and we'll
Yep.
be on Monday.
Yep. I know. I think that part's a little crazy.
That's okay. Nobody uses the post
We're going to
office
conflict
anyway.
with somebody since the state didn't follow. the
Right, right. It won't, it's
That's-
not gonna matter
and that's
either
the
way.
problem.
There's
That's the
gonna be,
problem.
We're
I
gonna
mean,
be out no matter
we're
what.
just reacting to a bad
Right.
decision, like maybe not bad decision, but just a different decision.
And we can change our personnel policy if the state ever changes
That's
their
true.
policy.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, moving on, summary actions. Mike?
I feel like a permanent fixture. So, we're a little bit ahead of the gun on Summerhill Lane due to Some of the parts will take between 18 and 20 months to get. So I've had Dave prepare this. These bids are right. The number 3 bidder, Core and Main, is an accurate bid.
Wow.
It's just everything is just a little bit more, so I want you to know that is comparable. We've reached out to Western. We're not quite sure why they're not bidding us again anymore, but I'll make a personal phone call. But we're recommending to go with Mountain Lands and to get these parts ordered so that Summerhill Lane can move forward. Hopefully, we can have the parts by the time that they're ready to go. So,
And when do we think that will be?
9 months, he said.
yeah.
Long
I mean,
time, long
it
time.
could be October when they're starting the water line stuff, if I can get the stuff there. It's a crazy world. I mean, and getting parts, and it's like, you know, I was talking to Dave, I go, we gotta get ahead of the game, because I mean, it's like water meters. He's having to order the water meters for this job at the same time to get them here, so we can serve the residents that are moving in there, so. It's, I don't know, what Councilman Summerhays has been hearing, but things seem to be getting better after the first of the year, but it's getting to that point to take care of everything. So I don't know what you're seeing on your side.
So it's interesting, I mean, anecdotally, Amazon, as we know, is building warehouses all throughout the country. They put a stop to all new projects. And so all of a sudden, where this is unrelated but related in terms of construction materials, you have a lot of steel deck and joists that people were ordering out 9, 10, 12 months out, where Volcraft and Nucor are now saying, hey, we now have joist and deck that Amazon isn't going to use anymore, who now wants to move up in the queue. So there are some people that are saying peak inflation may be rolling over, but you have a lot of demand from cities that received ARPA funds and otherwise that are trying to utilize money. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see how future bids kind of roll out, Mike. So
It's mind-boggling to me.
I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I'll make a recommendation that we approve. Oh, go ahead,
Well,
sorry.
just one last thing. I mean, these fees have been paid, so it's not using city money to pay for any of this. It will be out of the fees that they've paid, so. You know, we're still looking a long time. We may get some of the stuff showing up and we'll have to pay for it as we go. But I don't expect to see much of it, at least till August or September at the best case.
I'll make a recommendation to approve Mountain Land Supply for the Summerhill Lane Waterline Project parts in the amount of $200,000 to $879.97.
Second.
Right. Councilwoman Meekum?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Minutes. We have several. The 13th, 19th, work session, city council, and a special city council meeting last week on the 25th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Councilman Summerhays.
Just quickly, we've had a lot of our Trails Committee attendance recently as part of our regular council meetings. That's because of, actually, it's specifically with some of the work that's being done up on the hillside. We haven't had meetings. We've been trying to coordinate a lot of different schedule. We have our next meeting that'll actually happen, scheduled meeting back on at the end of this month. They'll be now working with Corey to kind of look at our trails and how we try to preserve from a ordinance and master planning perspective, as well as continue to just maintain trails where we can and make sure that they're done correctly within our city. South Davis Rec Center, we've had multiple meetings about trying to acquire additional lands for fields throughout the western part of the district area. There's a huge demand for field space and competing with a lot of residential development on the west side and trying to secure field space. Also working with North Salt Lake as part of the district. They're looking to expand and create what's called Hatch Park, where North Salt Lake would donate part of their land, which is a good, Bountiful has felt that they've always borne the brunt of the rec center cost, given their contribution to the land for the park, but this is, I think a lot of the cities are contributing. It just happens to be in their city, so I think it's more perception than reality that we got to work through. But North Salt Lake's really excited about a potential project down their way as well. So, and then the bond, they're looking to get that out on the with the voters to see if to gauge their temperature, I guess, and more than anything, if they're ready to approve that bond coming this fall for the rec center.
Okay.
Oh, I would say also that the school district has committed $6 million to that process as well. So that's a big bonus because the schools, swim teams use those facilities obviously quite a bit. So having the school districts buy in, whereas last year it wasn't solidified, is a important step in terms of public buy-in. That's all I've got.
Thank you. I don't know if we lost the mayor, or is he potentially iPhone 3?
I have one item from the mayor, so he was having some reception issues. He's just encouraging, everyone needs to go out and fill out the Wasatch Integrated Waste Management Survey. He really wants people to go get that done. So
Have we put something publicly out to?
yes, I was just going to verify, but Bryce is shaking his head, yes.
Perfect.
Are we also, is Bryce going to put something on the website about flipping the strip, and probably something, well, you're already doing something on the water, on water conservation.
Yeah, Bryce spent time with Public Works yesterday, and yes, so we'll be putting stuff out there regarding water conservation. Flip the strip, we want to make sure Weaver Basin approves our language before we start, but absolutely we want to get the information out there, along with the educational materials.
Thank you.
There's a page, it's not public, I'm just working on the back end, and as soon as that gets approved, and so other things, I can just make it go live. So whenever that happens.
He's awesome.
As I mentioned earlier, will you please make sure that our education page includes that there are caveats to flip the strip? Because I would hate residents to start tearing things up and think they're still eligible for a rebate. So if we can make sure they understand there is a process for that once we are eligible, that would be awesome.
A city and a Weaver Basin process, yes, yep.
Yeah.
And what they teach in the Weaver Basin class, right, they do say mulch is okay, so we do need to make sure they understand. Might be okay with Weaver Basin, but for city, it's not allowed.
I think we'll just have like a simple chart that says what's allowed for us and what they say, so that people know that one is allowed and not the other.
Check marks next to
Yeah,
it.
check marks or something.
Okay, sounds good, thanks, Bryce.
Brent?
My report. Thank you. I do have a number of items. Met with the city managers, the 15 cities in Davis County met with animal care regarding raccoons, and to find out, because again, they took our conversations we had to their level to see what they can do. It was kind of interesting, to be frank, that a number of cities aren't experiencing the call volume. They're just not getting calls. Farmington used to be one of the busiest, and they only receive 5 calls a year now. So really, there's only a handful of cities, 3 cities that there's a number of complaints coming from regarding raccoons, and Centerville is one of them.
Who are the others?
I don't recall the other ones.
Are Farmington residents trapping and putting them in Centerville?
So,
Trapping really
so there were a number of options available that Ashley discussed, which, by the way, she's doing a phenomenal job. I think she's been incredible. She's working with us on another item with our own city, and she's been very proactive and very helpful. So, but anyway, there were a number of options presented to the city managers, and that is, do we hire someone to focus on this issue? This is the cost it's going to be, and here's how much we're going to have to assess. Do we just contract with somebody, or contract with somebody to pick up the animals for you, or do we just give you a list of available exterminators that can come out there and pick it up? So what they've opted to do was they've contracted with a company that can come out. Now, the resident will be responsible for trapping the animal and paying the fee. Can't recall, I think the fee was $150. So it'll be a service that's available through the county, so they don't have to go out and find their own exterminator, but the county has somebody on contract. If you hire someone on your own, I believe the amount is more than that. Now, again, the question is, you've got to trap the animal yourself. So
Sounds pretty outrageous compared to what it's been. And the whole thing is very, very difficult for me to understand from where the county was 5 years ago.
As I recall, I think one of your frustrations, Bill, is, look, we're already paying for the service, and now you're gonna tell me I have to pay an additional fee on top of it if I'm already paying as part of the district? Is that, am I
Yeah.
recalling that correctly?
Yeah, when I first experienced the problems, they loaned us the traps. They loaned us the traps, they came and picked it, now, we had to trap it, yes, but they loaned us the traps, they came and picked it up, they disposed of it, everything, and there was no charge. And I had it done a number of times. Now, we lost the trap loans years ago, and I purchased traps, I have traps, but
Even then, Bill, when they stopped doing the traps for free, it was $10 for a trap. It was not, exorbitant.
It was not 150.
So there are a number of things, I'm just saying with the county, at least they're doing something, they're making the service available. It may not be great, but it is one of those same things. It's the cost of doing business, and they couldn't incorporate and continue to provide that service with the limited budget they had, right?
well, what are they doing?
Oh, they're busy. They're busy.
So I'd
Is
poll
it more
everybody
dog
in
and
the
cat
room, when was the
calls then?
last
Mostly
time?
dog is your issue.
Pardon?
What?
Mostly
Dogs.
dogs is your issue.
But what are they, I mean,
I'm not gonna get into the operations. This
know.
is not my place
I
to-
know, but I'm just saying, years
telling
ago,
you-
there were dogs running the street.
I'm telling you, there's only a few
There's no
cities
dogs
that
really
have this
for them to
concern.
pick up.
and
They
we're
used
one
to
of
go
them.
door to door looking for people's dogs that were licensed. I haven't had anybody at my door in many a years. I don't know. I'm with Bill. I struggle. How much are we paying them?
But I'm telling you, you have 12 other cities who are saying,
Maybe we
we
need
don't
to do
even
it
think you
ourselves."
need to do this at all. So that would be the next step. If you want to have a separate conversation where we buy traps and we hand it off to Alan Ackerson and the police department to do, then,
Oh, he perked up. He doesn't even know what we're talking about. He doesn't even know.
but in all honesty, I mean, animal control and dealing with wildlife is tough. It is, you need specialized skills and equipment. It could be very expensive. I'm just telling you, animal control, Davis County says we're out. So if we want to provide something for our residents, it's on us at this point. So if you want me to schedule a work session on that, happy to do so. But I'm just telling you that service made available. There's only a handful of cities that have the concern.
How
Majority will.
much do we pay a year or two for
Oh,
our?
we get a heck of a deal, $55,000 a year.
Oh,
It's a
alright.
heck of a deal.
I guess I can't open up my own
In
dog
Yuma,
catching
we paid
business.
$800,000 a year.
Raccoon
Just
catching
FYI.
business.
Yes.
So,
Well, I'm-
$800,000 a year is what we paid in Yuma.
Okay, all right.
How big was
I'll
Yuma?
leave them alone.
Wow.
Huh?
How big was Yuma?
100,000 people. So times 5, we'll say 50 times 5 is 250.
Did you have those little desert pigs, what are they?
Javelinas. is what they call
Javelinas,
them.
that's it.
No,
Were
we
you,
didn't have
were you
javelinas.
dealing with those?
We just dealt with that. We just dealt with dogs and feral cats. Was
You were
becoming
paying
an issue.
$800,000
Just for
a year.
dogs.
Wow.
Just for dogs.
Okay.
You're
Moving on.
right, it's a deal.
Moving on.
So, property swap with Davis County, I know I talk about this often, but Lisa Romney is drafting an agreement right now to swap the property at Smith Park with the library. So, we're working on that agreement, and that'll be coming forward too. Community garden, and I know there's been a lot of conversation about that. Had a conversation with Bruce today. We're okay proceeding with community garden as is, with all the spaces being sold. We are just gonna create some, and maybe Bryce can help me out with this since he's got a connection, but some temporary signs to put all around the garden, just reminding people to conserve water. Don't be ridiculous with the water. And I think for most part, people who garden are generally good with water.
Well, and I think the community garden liaison, the Reds, were here, and they're the ones that have been really.
Really, that's the big thing. We'll try and proceed and encourage water conservation, but I think we go that route.
Well, and I think too, I talked to them over at the museum, and I think they've got a contract that they always sign, and they've added to it. If people are abusing water, we could have it turned off. So hopefully they'll kind of monitor.
They'll give
each
us a
other.
warning first
They'll,
before we get
they'll, well, but what I'm saying is they'll monitor, they won't want their, I mean, if they turn it off to community garden, everybody's gonna lose it. So hopefully there'll be a little peer pressure there to not be the one to cause them to lose it.
So we'll just create some temporary signs. Bryce is great with that. Maybe a QR code to the water conservation website on the sign or something like that.
Yeah, good job.
Well, I think a specific statement about that. If any of us abuse it, it will be shut off for all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Something
You
that's.
stay there. He wants to get up. We'll talk about your crazy ideas tomorrow. But anyway, there's things we do. So we're gonna proceed. We're not gonna make, reduce the sale of lots or ban it. We think it should continue. We just need to be smart. The last item I have is I met with Tracy James today. He lives next to East Gavelin Park. He was able to secure a $30,000 grant to help improve East Gavelin. So he just mentioned that to me today, so I'm going to bring it back before council at the next meeting to just get the council's blessing, and then he'll get access to that funding to help just firm up the trails, make them a little more distinct. And
Where did he get a $30,000 grant?
Is he requesting an easement as part of that?
No. Well, that's a separate conversation that Lisa and I are working on. When we talked about that today too.
Okay.
So.
He's asked me about it, and I always kind of.
He's working with the Sons of Pioneers who were able to get the grant, and I'm not sure.
Is there a cost sharing requirement on that? Or is it 100%?
100%. There'll be some in-kind that maybe Mike and Bruce might have to help out with, just clearing some way, but I think we'd be willing to do that for a $30,000 donation, so. That's all I have. That's just questions for me. And then cemetery, next meeting, just so you're aware.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be a closed session
Closed?
discussion.
Before.
Be here all night?
Be here all night.
Before or after?
After, because after. We have other items.
Okay.
There's always more items.
Motion
Sounds like we need a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion, meeting adjourned.